Listen, folks, I know there's a history here. I'd like to get this hearing in today. You know, everybody needs to just focus on the relevant facts, okay? I know there's a history here.
Are you talking up by Sunset Mart? Up the hill by the gas station?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did you? All right, who's responsible here?
What's that?
Who's responsible here? Whose house is this?
Yeah, I haven't been drinking or anything, right?
No.
Okay, drive careful, okay?
Thank you.
This is what the other group had that ran away.
Oh, really? You just ditched it? Awesome.
Yeah, those ones kept walking in the car.
That's truly for the win.
That I was given to you. So there was 2 different discs. Okay, they all knew about it.
We're not here to talk about the alcohol stuff, okay?
Okay.
But this is the second noise complaint we've had here tonight within 2 hours.
How are you?
Good. All right.
Good. Is this your place?
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why we're here?
And I see noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Big speaker right there.
Yeah.
Nothing against having a party. Once neighbors start calling in, then we have an issue.
Like brains, and like if you need a lot of brain.
But guess what? You can't hear a word I'm saying because I muted myself. That's how we're going to start it off tonight. Cheers to ourselves. Fuck it. What I just said was that we're going to have a great show tonight. We have a very special guest, a fucking great guest, actually. And tonight's episode is Idaho4. We're going to have a war room with Chris. He's here, author of Broken Plea. I am getting straight into it with the Idaho4 case. If you want to know Chris's background, everything he's done, you guys Google it. Now, tonight, the only thing I'm going to give Mr. Chris Whitcomb a hard time about is Bill Thompson. That's the only thing. Because this mug we sent to Bill back a couple years ago, and it says 4 stages of life. Stage 1, a man's life. Number 1, you believe in Santa. Number 2, you don't believe in Santa. Number 3, you are Santa. And number 4, you look like Santa. Those are the 4 phases of a man's life right there. Let's bring him out. Chris Whitcomb, author of Broken Plea. How you doing, Chris?
Man, it's so great to meet you in person. I guess I got all 4 stages, right? I mean, I look like Santa, maybe. Give me a beard. You know.
Did you like that or what? We sent this. TNT sent this on over to good old Bill back in the day. I wonder if he got it. I don't even know if you got it.
No, I didn't know about it back in the day. I've never seen the cup. I don't know about any of this, but it's fantastic.
Oh, no. I'm saying I sent this to Bill Thompson's office.
Oh, wait. You wonder if I get the cup? Yeah. Yes,
no, I was
cup.
wondering if he got it, like if he actually got the gift.
I'm sure he got it. I would want to hope he would laugh at it, but I think maybe Santa, at that stage of Santa's life, he may not have laughed at it.
Right. So first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the show, number 1. Number 2, I apologize if you guys ever reached out. I just want everybody to know that. I did not blow off Chris. I can promise you I did not get the email because I would have been the first person to be like, wait, you wrote a book? Wait, you're an ex-FBI agent? Wait, what? Let's talk about this. So, again, if you guys want to know all about Chris, he's done a lot of shows already. He's actually even gone and did a show with Brian Enton, which I do not recommend. But there's other stuff where he's talked. He explains a lot about who he is, his background. So, if Chris, if you don't mind, if we just jump into your book, the Idaho4 case, and I just want to rock and roll. I got my pens, pencils. I'm here to like just literally indulge in everything that we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
How's
you're the
that?
boss. Yeah, I'll follow. You go, I'll follow. It's all good.
Okay, so we talked about doing like a Jeopardy style, and I thought, you know what, I'd rather do rapid 20. So I've done this in the past where I just ask 20 questions rapid, and it's like the first thing that comes to your brain, you just say. So like, are you an ice cream lover of vanilla or chocolate?
No.
So neither.
No, neither.
Okay. Papa Rogers. Who is Papa Rogers?
No clue.
Okay. 4chan author. Who is the 4chan author?
I don't even know what that is.
Perfect. We're already vibing. How were the tips organized in the Idaho4 case? If they were even organized?
I've seen an organization of those tips in a spreadsheet. I don't know how they came in, but they were managed in a spreadsheet, a specific program.
Were they FBI, here's this, Idaho State, or is it just everything?
They were identified, but it was everything.
Okay. Was it in chronological order?
Not by header. Was it what?
Okay. Was it like chronological order?
Yes, I think they were chronological order, yes.
Okay. Question number 5 is boat or jet ski?
I hate the water. I had a surf shop in Bali for 5 years. I lived and surfed in Bali. I had a surf shop in Bali, surfed 5 years. I hate the water.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not going. Yeah, I hate the water.
Okay.
Bizarre. All right.
What's your sign? I'm a Pisces. What are you?
Capricorn.
Capricorn? Solid. Key individuals in your book, you write down, here's the defense team, here's the prosecution team, here's the police. In your book, you don't mention anybody involved with the FBI as being like key individuals for the police. Why?
Wait, key individuals for the police. You mean key individuals who are FBI agents in the investigation? I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, no, like you're in your book, you list the
key in law enforcement. I think it's a heading for law enforcement.
Yes.
I think the FBI, because I was an FBI agent and I know how the FBI works, and I know how the FBI works in this case, and they were not key in this investigation the way other law enforcement officers are. They didn't file reports in the same way. And the way we should talk about that at some point if you want to. We'll come back to it. But it was primarily because they did not have an investigative authority the way other law enforcement officers did. And we can talk about it more in detail.
Okay. Perfect. I think this is question number 9, and that would be movie genre. If you had to pick, so you have to take somebody to the movies.
Movie, I'd say thriller. I like thrillers.
Okay. Last movie you watched?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I probably watched a movie very recently. Stop Making Sense with the Talking Heads. It's an old concert movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm a guitar player. I've got a band, and I love.
That's right. I knew that. I knew that.
Yeah, that was the last thing. I mean,
that
old
makes
movie
sense.
for the 50th time, but it's a great movie. That's the last movie I watched, which was not last night, Friday night. Friday.
For the prosecution, who do you think would be the most vital person to testify for the prosecution? Who does the prosecution has to nail if this was to ever go to trial?
Oh my God! Another fantastic question, and this we've got to talk about this because because the usual suspects, I don't think they ever would have testified. I don't think the primary witnesses that you and I know, I don't think they ever would have testified, and we should talk about why. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't know who they come down to. If this had gone to trial, I'm not sure who would actually make it to the stand, to be honest with you.
Okay. And then for the defense, who was the defense's, you think, who would you say?
It's certainly not Koberger. Koberger would never have taken the stand. Obviously, he's never testifying, and that's always a very big deal. There was no suspense in this case, right? Who was the defense? I would say it would have to be Turvey. It would have to be Turvey, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Brent Turvey.
Yep. for absolutely, I was going to say him or Cyree, and with the potentiality that I think personally, the cross examination was going to be the defense's best. Like I think they were just going to shred people.
Shred. First of all, and that's it. Listen, we're talking about a chess game. It's very, very strategic. I think for reasons that you and I will discuss, many of the obvious witnesses, law enforcement witnesses, witnesses from the community, have major, major problems in terms of cross-examination. That's really, really smart where all your stuff is smart, but it's really a direct point that out because many people, they'd say, well, so-and-so would take the stand. And based on what we now know, they probably couldn't take the stand for various reasons, from Giglio to other statements.
Okay. In the beginning of this case, Judge was representing, or was the judge, and this gets moved to Ada, so it goes to Hippler.
Hippler.
Do you think if Ann Taylor had to do it all over again, do you think that she would have not have asked for 6 months to have the preliminary hearing more? Or do you think that she would have said, we want to keep it here because things are going my way with Judge? What do you think? If she was hindsight, she could do it all over. What do you think?
Hindsight, do it all over again. Yes, except for one thing. She didn't know anything at the beginning. She was dumped. The staggering size of what was dumped in her lap would have made that impossible. Would she have liked to go back and do it again? Yes. Could she have? No.
Okay. So that brings me to my next question, which is, do you know the date or at least a ballpark figure of when Ann Taylor and her team said to themselves, I think IgG was used?
Yes, I believe I do. And I believe, wait, the first that she suspected it, or when?
Because it's not in the probable cause. You know what I mean? So here she is reading this probable cause, and all of us.
It was much, much later, and I think you have to tag it against the Franks hearing, which was it January of 25? I think it was. When she knew it was a problem, and she would have contested it shortly after she knew it was a problem. I would say, based on what I've seen, I don't think she knew about it for quite a long time.
So she started filing discovery requests in March of 2023.
Yeah.
And that's where the wheels kind of just started. Okay, she's trying to talk to Bethany. She was going to subpoena her for the preliminary hearing. And then they agreed to let her, what was his name? Batanti, go and interview her. Were you ever privy to hearing the interview between Batanti and Bethany Funk? Did that ever take place?
No, I've never seen that. I have not heard it.
Okay.
But can I just qualify and say, I believe if we get into the weeds on the legal process, how things go, I think what Ann Taylor knew, and if I know what Ann Taylor's thinking, I'm going to say so. But I think that Ann Taylor saw giant holes in this thing. Holes in process. So she looks and says, well, wait a minute. If I see a sign of this, I see a shadow of this, but where is the actual thing casting a shadow? So she identified elements of this case that did not appear in the Brady disclosure. And then she started going, I don't know the number, but you probably, maybe you actually know the number, the dozens of supplemental discovery requests. And every one of them indicates 24. That she would, come on.
Well, 24 filings, and they were over, I think it was over 400 individual requests.
Exactly right. So that is an astute defense attorney saying, I see signs of a rock because I see the broken window, right? I see the broken window. Where's the rock? I want to find the rock. Yeah. And that's what those are based on. So she was playing catch up the entire time. There's no question about
because they were playing hide the 8 ball.
Well, that's what she would allege. Absolutely. That's what she would allege. Yeah. Listen, okay. One way to hide the 8 ball is just to dump hundreds of thousands of bits of data on somebody's lap and say, you make sense of it. I think I told somebody when I was going through this thing once, long after the fact, and I open a file, it just looks like it's an icon. You click on an icon, this particular document. And I clicked on it. It was 8,000. I don't want to mistake the number. I think it was 8,247 pages. And it was an icon. It looked like it could have been one page. So Ann Taylor, and I talk about it in the book too, how that process works, not just in this, but it's a prosecution tactic in almost every major investigation. to dump vast amounts of information
Yeah, data
and
dumps.
to overwhelm the defense.
Okay. So, but when Ann Taylor's asking for like specific stuff, like if she's asking for something so specific as, because when you would open up a report, let's say, and there's somebody's name in it, because
Right.
so-and-so says, I was hanging out with so-and-so. And then Ann Taylor's like, where is, for example, Kai Davis's interview?
Right.
Because, and then here they're like, we don't have one. Wait, what do you mean you don't have one? We never interviewed him. You never interviewed the person that Bethany Funk was supposedly sleeping with? As
Well,
like
you've
her
done,
sexual
I
partner?
would just say you have done that. I have just done that. And
Mhm.
of the people watching right now, many of those people have done the same thing, right? We're all investigators. We're all curious. We're all looking at it in different ways, some professionally and some otherwise. And it's her job to find those things. She had a small staff. She had an enormous amount of information to wade through. But some of those were just exactly like they'll reference something, never see a report, and then obviously go after it. And you know, the responses to those discovery requests were kind of crazy too. So it was a long battle.
Perfect. Okay. Hot dog or hamburger?
Oh, that's a tough hot dog. I like I mean, I love them both. I'm a hot dog. I love them. Yeah, mustard. no
Ketchup or
relish.
mustard?
No mustard. No
Okay,
relish.
so there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Simple guy. Meat
Sports
potato.
team. Sports team. If you had to pick a sport out there where you were like, your life depends on it, and you say you were going to challenge somebody to like play that sport against them, and you needed to win to save your life, what's the sport?
I want to beat Travis Kelce's record as a tight end for the Kansas City Football Chiefs.
He's getting married, by the way.
That's
He's,
a
you know, he's
rumor.
from Cleveland.
That's a rumor. We're talking facts in the show. That's a rumor.
You know, he went to Cincinnati, my alum, right?
Yeah, that's right. I saw that.
Yeah.
You told me you went to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Right on.
He comes from a really good
Excellent pedigree.
family.
He what?
Yes, he comes from a really good family, so that's good.
I mean, listen, his podcast is huge because he is so.
Oh,
he and his brother both are such. They come across as such wonderful human beings. I mean,
Yeah, they're electric.
yeah,
They are.
You want to hang out with them? They're electric. I mean,
They're because they're just normal people. Like they are just down to earth people. I think
They're
that's why
down-to-earth
Taylor
people.
enjoys it.
You know, I got to say, too, we're talking about this stuff. You don't know anything about me, but I got to spend a fair amount of time with Howie Long. Sometime, I don't want to overstate this, but with Howie Long and his family. And Howie Long that you see on television on Fox Sports, he is one of the most genuine, cool, down-to-earth, nice guys you've ever met in your life. And so are his kids and his family. I mean, some of these people, you see the stories come out and they're kind of wild. There are other people in that industry in sports that are just the finest human beings alive. And I would think the Kelce's are like that, and Howie Long, you know, people like that. Yeah. Great people.
Well, since we just got on the football topic, we're going to talk about the Sigma Chi party that night. It was a quote unquote jersey party. Okay. And so you were supposed to wear something that like signified like a girls with like could wear a t-shirt that had whatever the sports team, you know, and then like maybe like, well, Bethany, did you see any photos of Bethany from the Sigma Chi party that night?
No, zero.
Okay. So Bethany was wearing that morning a Tom Brady jersey, and there was two things that I noticed of it.
Well, I should say before that, I saw nothing from the party.
Yeah, like you didn't see her in like a selfie that night at like the house or like at the party?
No.
Okay. Because what's still on the path for me is that outfit. Now get this, Tom Brady was playing a game he plays for Tampa Bay at the time, and he was playing against the Seahawks that early morning because they were the London game.
Oh,
okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I had two things then, and it's like either Bethany Funk is a huge Tom Brady fan, woke up and was like, yeah, let's start pre-gaming for they're playing the Seahawks, which a lot of those kids in that area are fans of Seahawks. Or Bethany Funk slept in her jersey that she wore that night. So do you know if this was something that the defense looked into to see the clothing that the two girls were wearing when they were interviewed by Noonan's that morning?
I do know that I have never seen anything to indicate they looked at what they were wearing. I never saw anything in the reports. Nobody ever asked her in any of the extended interviews. Never saw that was an interest. But the room was fascinating. The photos of the room, and you've probably seen the clothes in the chair, the sweatpants in the chair, and things like that. And there's no indication. I think there were some pants on the floor. I don't want to mix up the various rooms. But it would be hard to tell what she was wearing at any given time. I mean, that room was pretty hectic.
Oh no, I just meant like if they were. I'm specifically talking about the pictures from that night. If they're at the Sigma Chi party and they're taking these selfies with Lakeland and all these, Bethany Funk's talking about how she was taking pictures with Murphy the dog. And so what is she wearing? Is it matched?
I don't know. I don't know.
But that would be something that would exist that we'd be able to like.
Well, it's that's a really interesting question, and I can't remember if I put this in a book or not. But there is an interview where they're and you probably have it. It's probably private I mean, it's probably in the public now, but it's a recording of the interview, and they're asking about these very same questions. The detectives were interviewing her, and she'd say X, Y, and Z. Both her and Dylan, and they would say, "Well, I have this on my phone," and they would talk about a photo on the phone. At that time, police had not dumped their phones and didn't have all these pictures. So there was a fairly significant gap in time between when.
Well, they dumped Bethany and Dylan's phones on the 13th. They got them.
They got them, but they
downloaded them, and they gave them back their phones.
They may have downloaded them, but they were asking her about what was on her phone and acted like they had not seen those photographs in terms of establishing timeline well after the fact.
But Gooch comes in her email in her interview, and she saw that Blaker was trying to like play like that, like they didn't know. And then Gooch comes in and says they went through the phone. The phone says this because they were talking about Dylan.
He does, but so you've heard them. You didn't think when he first started asking about a phone, you think he was trying to fake her out or something? You think he was playing coy?
He was acting like, yeah, he wasn't saying it. He was acting like he didn't know if it was there or not. And then Gooch, hurry up quickly, says, well, because your phone has gaps in it. It has gaps in the fact that you're texting, and then you go and you switch to Snapchat, and then you're only on Snapchat.
I heard that. I think I just had a different interpretation of that. And, I used to teach interview interrogation at the FBI Academy. And my take on it was that he was, he just didn't know. That was my take. Gooch clearly did, but it was two different angles.
Well, how does Gooch get the information and Blaker is? Because
that's the way things work. I mean,
I just feel like Blaker didn't. So you think that Blaker is, he wasn't doing his homework. He wasn't looking at the stuff. He was.
That was my interpretation. Yes. Yeah, it was.
Okay. So because Dylan that morning, she had a Phoenix 99, like shirt type of jersey type thing. And so here we have Bethany, who has this jersey on. And then we have Dylan with this Phoenix 99. And so they're basically both in the attire that was asked to be worn to the Sigma Chi party. And they're in it at noon on camera with Noonans. And you're telling, is this something that the defense wasn't like interested in at all, to see that these girls hadn't got out of their clothes that they went to, out in, and that they didn't change in the pajamas?
Based on my interpretation of everything that I've seen, it was not a consideration.
And wouldn't you think that you would want to consider that if you were like want to know if these girls truly went to sleep, if they were awake, if they were? You guys were talking about cleanup.
First of all, this is what I love about what you do. I love what you do because you come at it in ways that other people don't, including me. Right.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at timelines. I'm looking at photographs. I'm establishing various things. I'm looking at the forensic evidence, the behavioral aspects of the crime. And you're saying, wait a minute, what did they wear to the party and what do they weigh? Because that would be more your experience than mine. I come back from a party and who knows what the hell's going to happen. I wake up the next day and whatever. But it's a great line of questioning. And straight up, I didn't really pay much attention. I did.
Yeah.
But
I don't think that they did. I think that if they did, you would know about it because they would have. I'm guessing that would have been part of like the conversation only to the fact of the matter of which is here's Dylan's room that we're going to get into right now. Every light, can we agree? You think every light in that house was on?
Every light in the house was on. I don't think there's any agreeing. It's obvious.
It's obvious.
I mean, that thing was that was incredibly brightly lit, every single room.
Absolutely. Every light was on. And so like this whole theory that Brian Colbert or whoever the killers were, right, that they waited till the lights went out. And okay, now is our chance to go. That's just out the door. Like that's just
it's ridiculous. Out the door. And listen, we've gotten to the point where it's kind of crazy. I wrote this book, forensic analysis of the evidence. There's a behavioral aspect. I did this whole thing from my perspective, as a law enforcement officer and as an investigative journalist. And it dropped a bomb on this world because everybody, and I'm talking about, I saw this the other day that somebody looked it up and said there are 20,000 true crime podcasts. Is that true? That's
There's
what they
probably,
so,
I would believe it. I would even think more.
Yeah, well, my point is, people have been talking this for 3.5 years. Many people have theories. Many of those theories are what they built their content on, and now they have to react to the fact that maybe their theories weren't correct. And I say maybe. So then what do you do then? It's like, I like physics, and when they, threw string theory out the window, there are people that worked their entire lives at the far end of academics who have nothing to talk about anymore. And I think that's a big part of where we are. So it's very important when we talk, for me personally, to talk about details and be specific as I can. Because people, I don't have social media. I don't follow YouTube. I don't follow these things. But people say, this person said this about you and that about you. And I go, well, yeah, I mean, I'm old and I got maybe bad taste in art and I got bad teeth. It's like, what's that got to do with anything, right? But here's what I wanted to say. When you look at that house and the lights, people say switches, whatever. The majority of those lights were plugged into the wall, which means that somebody would have to walk around the house before Officer Nunez got there with his body camera and start plugging those lights in. They're not switches that you could casually turn and off.
So they didn't have a light switch that controlled that wall?
I believe they did not. Okay. Not. I mean, some switches we know are activated with a switch on the wall. I think because of the way the room was set up, I think that was not the case because, many houses.
It doesn't matter. I'm right with you.
It doesn't matter.
All those lights were on. Yes. Okay. So
when Mitch Nunez walked in, they were all on.
So then Dylan's bedroom. Did you see her bed and all the shit that was on top of it?
Everything. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. How does somebody sleep on that? Right. We're gonna both agree like that's interesting sleeping.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Perfect. So now
same with Bethany's if we're gonna go there.
Absolutely. And then we can even talk about chargers and stuff like where you would have to be plugging these chargers in.
All right. Now we think very much like, all right, rock on.
Yeah. See, there you go. Like this is what I'm saying, like specifics, like,
Yeah. Let's talk specifics.
So I love it. The first chapter of his book, it's awesome. He's like, this is what Bill Thompson said at the plea deal. Okay. In which I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that would be very similar to how Bill Thompson would have approached like an opening statement?
Yes.
Okay. And then everything that you're going to be promising this jury, you're going to have to produce.
Correct.
Okay.
The 3-pillar offense, right? DNA, the white car, and the cell tower DNA. Excuse me, the cell tower analysis, the pings. That was the prosecution.
Yes. And obviously, like probable cause. I think the big thing here is without putting in to the probable cause warrant anything to do about IG that you use investigative genetic genealogy, you're lying in and of itself, because how are you saying you got to Brian Kohlberger when you put Payne up there and he's like, yeah, we did not know his name until investigative genetic genealogy, and that name was released on December 19th. And what the FBI told us is that, more or less like that's how it comes out. So he's basically admitting, which is basically what Ann Taylor needed to get to be able to get that Franks, and she's denied.
The short answer is yes, because you like short answers. The long answer is 2 chapters of the book. The long answer is complicated until I saw a thing, somebody interviewed me and it became a story that I saw, and they brought in a quote unquote expert who said in a podcast and blew me away. I think she said she was an attorney, but she said the jury doesn't want to get into all that fancy DNA stuff. She said they want to look across the courtroom and see those bushy eyebrows and say, that's the animal that did it, right? And I would ask you and all of your viewers, if the American justice system comes down to all that fancy DNA stuff and you're on trial, maybe you'd want to revisit that conversation. The DNA in this case is a big deal. I don't care what it is.
Well, and the placement of the crime scene in and of itself
is
a big deal. And that's what they tried to hide the entire time, was the crime scene. Like, let's not talk about that at all.
Exactly.
Let's just talk about, you said, this car, this car. So
the cell
we're
tower
going to
dumps and the DNA. That was the offense. That was the prosecution narrative. Yes.
Okay. How about the term CIs? Did the defense say, because Ann Taylor knows how Bill Thompson operates, she worked for him, she knows that there's CIs there, and the FBI has CIs, local people have CIs, state police have CIs. what type of CIs was that even a conversation?
There was a conversation in the sense that I saw reports that indicate they were checked. In this, like almost all major criminal investigations, law enforcement agencies have networks of CIs, confidential informants, and you immediately canvass them to see what's going on because they want to make money, right? The reason you retain them and pay them money is to tell you when something like this happens. So they were surveyed. I saw 0 reports that indicated reasonably compelling information about any one person. I saw nothing out of the CI reports that indicate any immediate suspect. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, but was there any reports that showed that a CI was in the area of 1122 King Road that night?
If so, I didn't see it.
Okay.
I personally have not seen it before. Like,
okay. That's obviously you've gone through a lot of material, and some stuff I'm sure like you haven't even gone through because it's so much shit. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's a lot.
Okay, so
plus I also want to qualify. I've seen a tremendous amount. I have to assume there are things that I would not have been able to see anyway. And I know what I know. I whittled those down into the narrative of this book. I would say that other things would appeal to you and investigators that are taking this thing forward after me, because once those are washed out of an investigation, when Kohberger was identified, all of that went away. Anybody identified as a person of interest, a suspect, somebody that they followed, and and there were so many of them, so many people. Once Kohberger was identified, then everything else fell off to the side.
Have you seen any reports where after everybody would have arrived at the crime scene, which Moscow Police Department trampled through that? Would you agree with me? Like they were just having tea parties in the kitchen, walking all through it?
Yeah, I think, it's all in video, so it's not my impression. I think anybody that would look at it would see and say, what's going on over here? Yeah.
Yeah, like what's going on?
Plus the handwritten logs. You've probably seen the handwritten logs of who went in there and when they went through there. And
yeah,
I mean, they're walking out in the back in the snow and looking down at the footprints and everything else. It looked like there was a mosh pit in the backyard after a certain amount of time because the number of people that had walked in the snow.
Did they ever? Do you think it's really interesting that they never took any pictures or pointed out any paw print marks in the snow out there when you want to talk about a dog?
Yeah, I do. I think that's very, very interesting. The whole Murphy the dog thing is very, very interesting to begin with. But when you look at that backyard, and I think this is something that you would want to hit on at some point, how Brian Kohberger or the assailant came in from the back. Let's just assume Bill Thompson's narrative is accurate. And Brian Kohberger parked his car behind the house. The obvious choice for somebody wearing a black balaclava and black clothing with a knife and some blunt object, like a vacuum cleaner or whatever, the obvious path would be you get out of your car, you sneak into the woods, you use the woods as cover to go down through there. But that fenced-in property to the right and in the direction of what may have been Kohberger's size 13 footprints in the snow, the approach to that house is very interesting and compelling to me because it could have been an approach from different directions. So maybe we come back to that. Nothing from Murphy.
Well, no, so no paw prints from Murphy, and then here it is. Murphy supposedly is missing out and about, going outside, barking. You know what I mean? And
yes,
they're not trying to identify.
No documentation of footprints from the.
Did they find any dog food in the house?
That's fascinating. I don't remember anything on the floor. I've looked in every cupboard. I've looked in. I don't remember anything that indicates dog food. Was it there? Possibly. I did.
Yeah. No. I was just curious if it was okay.
I did not see it.
And then talking about now 1 week. So the cops wait until November 16th to ever go out to the world and say we're gonna have this our first presser. You've seen the crime scene photos. We've seen them. You've seen way more than we have seen. How would anybody ever be in a round table and say and look to themselves, the command center, which do you know who makes up the command center? Who they were considering, what individuals were command center?
Initially, you mean? Initially,
yeah,
it would have been Moscow Police Department, and it would have been, I assume it would have been somebody from the evidence response team. But, I used
Talbot, Payne,
yes,
Blazer,
yeah, exactly right. But
Mowry.
the answer is I don't know because there were no reports that say
Exactly.
These were the members. They were not documented, but I've been in many of them over time. And you're always going to start with the heads of the department and then the individual agencies. Moscow PD was so small, they didn't have a lot of individual squads or units. So it was a very small number of people. And then Idaho State Police at that point, initially, those first 3 days, was primarily evidence response. And it grew from there.
So would you agree or disagree that you could not say at any point in time and day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 7 to get to November 21st, would you be saying we're looking for only one person? Or would there be like, yeah, this totally like looks like it could be multiple people? What would you say you can't take that off the table? We don't know yet because we're trying to still get the lab reports back.
I never saw a report. The only thing I know is what I've seen in documents, photographs, lab reports, analysis of that kind. The primary source documents that outline everything that happened. And in law enforcement, if something doesn't end up on a piece of paper or on body cam video, it doesn't exist, right? And they're numbered. There are no gaps in the numbering of the supplementals. And the first hour was well recorded on video camera. So I mean, the whole day was right from many different perspectives. So the fact that there is nothing there leads me to believe things were happening very quickly. They were talking among themselves, and those interactions were not documented.
Okay, so on November 21st, why would you think it would be so important that Gilbertson, Payne, and Talbot do a recreation of getting this crime done by one person between 1 minute and 30 seconds to 3 minutes and 30 seconds?
It makes no sense to me at all. I've talked to law enforcement officials from local, state, and federal agencies that I know and asked these same questions, and I've not come up with a person that would make sense of that.
It wouldn't be because of what Dylan Mortensen is saying happened in the time frame?
I think that's the human answer. The human answer is they have one witness. That one witness is Dylan. And she said, I saw a man clad in black, wearing a balaclava, leaving the house about the time of the murders, and he had an object in his hands. If I were a law enforcement officer, I would say, all right, there's our guy, right? And she saw nobody else before or after. So that would be the answer, that they're looking for something immediate. And the immediate thing was we got one offender. I mean,
and nobody called the cops though. But she didn't call the cops though. So does that like weigh into the whole thing of like?
I don't think that ever weighed into anything. I don't think for a very long. No, but I do think it's typical. Not normal in the sense that that's not what training would indicate you do at a crime scene. But is it typical? Yes. I mean, look at John Benet Ramsey. Look at you could look at any number of cases.
We're judging MPD and Idaho State Police, MPD, the FBI, everybody that would have been involved in this case, and to include Bill Thompson, who was calling the shots, in my opinion. Like, how can there be this level of, hey, they did a great job when we can literally name off everything that they did was just fucking.
Somebody called me the other day and watched it, and they said, hey, you did a podcast and you said they did a great job, and obviously they didn't. I didn't mean to say they did a great job. What I meant to say is they did a comprehensive investigation.
Okay.
The Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, and the FBI did one of the largest, most comprehensive investigations I could imagine in a case like this in a small town. So I've got to be more careful in the words that I use. It was comprehensive in the sense that it was staggeringly broad within the community, who they interviewed, how, whatever else. Was it, do we see errors that happened along the way that, I talk in the book about this, about the butterfly effect, right? Ed Lorenz, and a small mistake at the very beginning become like a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil becomes a tornado in Dallas, right? That concept, that's what I see.
Yeah.
So
when you say it's broad though, it seems like everything that it seems like they knew what they were supposed to avoid. Like, for example, Ethan has an apartment. They didn't go to Ethan's apartment. They didn't process Ethan's apartment.
Well, they didn't process his apartment. They didn't process the human hair in his hand. I mean,
well, that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at is like they stayed away from things that could point them in a true direction. And it almost seems like that they knew this.
All right. So First of all, you're the
Or
first
they're
person
so
that's asked me
incompetent.
this. You're the first person that asked me. Of course, I mean, smart people involved in this thing, but that's a great question. Let me say this. I've done a lot of these in my career, like big ones and small ones, really big ones, really small ones, involving in terms of the violence and things like that. And there's a human element when you walk in. This started out as a medical emergency. When Officer Nunez arrived on scene, he thought it was a passed out woman, and it went to a quadruple homicide right now. Okay. The psychology of someone not trained to do that. This was not a homicide detective squad in New York City. And you've got to make that transition. They didn't search the house. He went out to get crime scene tape to wall off the front door. They hadn't even seen if there were other bodies in the house. So did things go badly? He said it was, he thought Ethan shot himself.
Well, he thought, well, and we're going to get into that. So that's
and
right.
Nobody checked the bodies. He was a medical professional before he became a law enforcement official. And nobody checked the bodies to see if they were dead. I mean,
because it was so obvious that they weren't. And that's where it's like, how are you saying, if you're Dylan Mortensen or anybody for that matter, that there's this this whole let's be clear. Calvin was the one that put it as a labeled it as an unconscious person. That 911 call says in the beginning, I mean, there's just so much statement analysis, just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
right.
Basically, when you're calling and what you say, you're not calling for help. There's not like bring an ambulance, it's your same thing that you thought at the time that you called 911 at 11:58 is the same thing that you thought at 4:28. So what changed? And the only thing that could have possibly changed is visual, or you're lying.
Okay, you're kind of running me down a road I don't want to go down, but I think you bring up a really great point. Let's just look at that call, right? We're skipping around, but let's just look at that call, right? When Hunter Johnson came to the house, went into the house by his own recollection. He led Officer Nunez up the stairs, down. When they're walking in, he said, I came up, I walked down the hall, I saw her, and she was dead hard. Those were his exact words. I mean, sorry, but
and they redacted that. That's why I love your book, guys. By the way, you have to get this book because his book doesn't redact the stuff. So I'm over here loving because I was like, oh my God, this is what was said. They redacted the part where they say that Ethan, it looks like he's saying Ethan committed suicide and it was killed her and then killed himself. That's what
the search warrant. If you look at the search warrant, the very first items, when you write a search warrant, you have to show that a specific item is in a specific place at a specific time. So you have to show in an affidavit for a search warrant, you have to show reasonable belief that you'll find something there. If you look at the search warrant, the initial search warrant, the very first thing on the list was guns, holsters, ammunition, weapons, because that was his first assessment. So when he walked in the room, Hunter had already assessed that she was dead hard, quote unquote. But Ethan at that time, and maybe you haven't seen these photographs, but he's lying in bed, completely covered in blankets, and you can see blood on the wall, but you can't see much more than that. And if it were me and I were responding to a crime scene, I would want to assess his condition, especially if I were a former emergency medical responder. And that didn't happen. There was no assessment of any of the four people by a law enforcement official to show that they were dead. None of them, none of the four.
Correct. And so let me ask you this then. I don't know if you know the history here with Moscow Police Department is that they like to just, everything's a suicide in that town.
I had no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, unattended deaths, man, in the Greek life, this is a suicide. You know what I mean? So that's why I thought it was interesting when I finally got your book to see, holy shit, Noonan's says the words, and then it was great. It was like, Warner was like, how'd you get there?
He literally said, how'd you get there? Like, what do you see?
Yeah,
I gotta say, look, I want to make sure that people understand that I'm not a shill for the defense. I am not.
I don't think you are.
I don't have an opinion. I don't have a theory. I just present things and say, based on my experience, we might want to look at these various things. So I'll point out things that are whatever. I thought Warner was very professional in everything he did. He was calm, collected, the gloves, everything. I thought it was exemplary, and many other things were not. And I think it's important to look at both. But it turned into a very bad day very quickly. And I want to be fair to people, right? I want to look and say what went wrong, but I want to be fair and not blanket anybody. I don't want to blanket Ann Taylor or Bill Thompson or any of the police involved. I think let's look in every individual case and go back and say, I do think the police, law enforcement across the board did a comprehensive investigation Maybe I should not have used it a terrific job because obviously things went wrong. So is that more clear, Lana?
Oh, yeah, that's way more clear because I think that, and that's just why I think that somebody, that's why I wanted to ask you that, because I was like, I don't think he thinks that, because when you read this book, there's just no way that he thinks that these people did a great job. Read this book. I don't think that he thinks that. You can have respect for different agencies and stuff like that. But in this case, in reading the book, I think that you're pointing out, at least what I saw, and it's what I've been saying on this channel for however long it's been, 3+ years, is that you guys, they have no answers to the questions that always originally were there. They weren't eliminating anything. If somebody said they were hanging out with so-and-so or they were doing this, well, then you would go and talk to that person, right? Ethan supposedly got a text from a girl, Erica, saying that you're being cheated on. There's no report of anybody going and talk to Erica about what's this text about. I mean, that's 101.
And why would that be important? Because they were apart during the course of the night, and nobody can really place the time when they came back. I mean, we know when they were back, but we don't really know when within that time frame. And I in the book I talk about what I established as a likely timeline in terms of the chronology of the killings themselves. Maddie and Kaylee on the 3rd floor, moving down, following the blood path to Xana, then down across the living room into her room, and Ethan. To me, that seems apparent to anybody that looks at this case. However, where, if somebody's dying on the 3rd floor, are Xana and Ethan, and why did they not hear it? Right? There are major gaps that we can come and talk about. But those text messages are important because they establish.
There was 2 of them. It happened at 5:03 and then at 12:43.
Yes, that's true. And there were other communications that I sort of peripherally hinted at in the book. There were a lot more communications.
There was a ton. I was like loving it. I'm like, you guys.
But some of them stand out as.
There's so many huge nuggets.
There's so many huge nuggets.
I'm thankful
the thing about the book is, I've written, this is my 6th published book. I did a couple memoirs and novels. I've written a lot of different types of things. And this is the 2nd true crime book. I had already finished another one that's going to come out in the fall. And I really love the idea that you would build a spine of primary source documents, because other books have come out in this case, documentaries. And I don't think that playing, soft focus lens and cello music really makes a cutting edge, hard examination of what we have here. And that's the reason I did it, right? So looking back and saying, the reason I could talk about this for days and days and days and days in podcasts is because we could talk about all the elements. But in order to make sense of them, and you read the book, I would hope you feel this way, you have to put them in context. You have to put them all together in a way that makes sense. And that's why a book is different than a conversation. We can look at all of those elements. Last night, I was watching the show last night, and you said that you would use this, thank you, as a manual moving forward because you're going to take it from here. And that's exactly right. I'm done with it, in terms of writing about it, but I would hope that you and other people look in a serious way, in a meaningful way at these things. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about now.
Well, that's the problem with every documentary that's come out to date, is that they're coming out with a documentary and there's they don't have the material to make a documentary, in my opinion.
There's no look, when you don't have any information to talk about. Look, I'm not talking about any one individual project. They can do whatever. I don't care. But if you don't have a lot of information, you end up circular reporting the information that's widely available with your text, with your context. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I think that's why there's people say what they say. They, being a lot of people in the true crime community in the world, just people in the street, have built theories about this case over the last 3.5 years, and they're going to stick with those theories. And people don't oftentimes really care about the evidence.
I want to know what's your theory off of, though?
But you and I do.
That's what I'm trying to say is, like, these people, we should all understand this. There's no material out there because it hasn't been released. So you can't possibly, how do you have a theory off of anything that's worth a damn?
Well, right? You and I don't, but a lot of people do. Well, you know that.
Yeah, but that's my point, is that people say, like, hey, Lana, when are you going to write that, do this documentary? It's like, you guys, as soon as they said they were going to get all this information and be able to FOIA this, and the judge is going to, all the stuff that was sealed that should have never been sealed, he's unsealing it. And it's like, I'm not writing anything in a documentary form until that material, otherwise why would I write something or produce something that's Off of what? So
Listen, I don't know.
appreciate your book. I appreciate your book because it's coming from the documents, not the narrative that Bill Thompson and the prosecution once pushed.
Right.
We haven't seen it.
You would know better than I believe there are no theories in this book. I believe that I don't speculate in this book. I believe that I present these things.
No, you question things.
I question things, and I think it's
That's
important.
how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I look at it right
you do
now.
You do a good job about that, and I think that you leave the reader to say, "Hey, either if you want to question this, this is why you should or shouldn't," but you leave that up to them, and I like that.
Well, and I'll say this, and it's not a defense; it's an explanation of my point of view. Right? No matter what you watch, like let's just talk politics. Right? You like Trump or you hate Trump. You like Biden.
No, I
or
don't
you
do
hate Biden.
politics.
No, but what I'm saying metaphorically as human beings, it's like you just asked me about the Chiefs. I saw some guy today. I was wearing a Chiefs hat on a run, and he goes, "Go Broncos!" Right? He's got to pick that. He's got to pick that in the middle. That's what we do as human beings. So right now, the people listening to this, you have it's a bell curve. You have 20% on the left saying this guy's an idiot. I hate his hair. What's that ugly painting? And that, and that's the way it is. And then you have 20 people at the right going, I want to know more. Tell me more. Yeah. The 60% in the middle are going, well, I thought this, I thought that. Do I change my mind? What about this? And they make their decisions. This is the world you live in. It's not the world I live in. I'm happy to engage it now, but I embrace all of those things. It doesn't mean they're all correct, but it's just.
Well, I think though that I'm sorry. Like I said, the only thing I'm gonna give you a hard time about is Bill Thompson. Bill Thompson's the one that confused everybody in this entire case. He confused the parents. He's confused. He came out in November 28th, 29th, and 30th of 2022 doing a horror tour, talking to the media, saying, "Well, if you knew what I knew, you would send your kid to school." Excuse me? You don't have anybody in custody. What do you know, Bill, on the 28th and 29th and 30th of November? Right. It was. How are you making those type of comments?
Well, I'm going to say this is probably not going to make you happy, but look, a carpenter doesn't really know how to do brain surgery or vice versa, right? And a career prosecutor, this is the end of a pretty admirable career as a prosecutor. That's what he does. I mean, that's his world. That's what he does.
No, he simply doesn't talk to the media. That was really unlike him. Why is he doing?
I'm saying a prosecutor acts like a prosecutor. Once they identified a suspect,
they didn't identify a suspect. They didn't identify a suspect.
Oh, you mean by the 28th?
I'm talking about on the November 28th, 29th, and 30th.
Okay.
He's out here, and I'm just like, what is this man doing? And then Ann Taylor uses it as an exhibit, as well as when he's telling everybody to spread the probable cause far and wide, like prom night. And it's like, dude, Bill, you did this, and it was almost like it seemed like you were part of the investigation. Now you're the prosecutor. And while you're doing all this stuff, you're the one that's actually talking to the media and telling people that you would send your kid to school if you knew what he knows. And it's like, how did you not just become a witness for the defense to say, what did you know on November 28th, 29th, and 30th that you're telling people to send their kids to the fucking school? How do you not become a witness?
I would just go back and say, in my experience, that's what you see. In my experience, that there was a clamoring mob of wonder about this case. Everyone wanted to know what's going on. He's got to say something. It became a political issue, right? You've got all the leaders involved. There was a tremendous amount of pressure, and it escalated every day. And he made different contradictory
stuff, though. He didn't have to say anything. They were putting out every single day. They had that media thing.
I'm saying they feel compelled to do that. If you look across, this is your realm. You work true crime, and all these cases, if you look at them, you almost always have something similar. It's just the way they respond. Did he have to? Should he have? That's another question. But you're asking why he did it, and I said because that's what they do.
But they arrest Brian Kohlberger, who is absolutely, who they think is the guy, right?
Oh,
he was planning to kill again, according to them, that he was becoming a serial killer. So I think it's just like, wow, Bill Thompson, you did this with a national stage. So when you want to talk about a decorated career, what have you done when the limelight's not on you? What do you do when there's no cameras? And that's my favorite part about Jose Baez, when he says, you guys, if they're doing this shit and when your eyes are on it, glued, and there's mass media, what do you think these people do when their cameras aren't rolling?
Well, the answer is, I respect where you're going. The answer is, I know what they do because I've done this for a very, very long period of time. the law enforcement does an investigation. They take the evidence, they give it to a prosecutor. It could be a local prosecutor, it could be an assistant United States federal prosecutor. The prosecutor always takes the case over. Then they tell the cops what to do. And they say, look here, look there, and they direct the investigation. In this case, they even went to the crime scene right away, right? He was there very, very early on. So I look at it and say, I agree with you.
They were writing search warrants.
Right. So I agree with you the way you're questioning all of it. I fully do. But I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm telling you the way these things, the way it works. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying if you look at the way they typically act, and then you talk about that behavior, that's one thing.
And I'm saying that the reason that this ended in a broken plea is because of Bill Thompson's leadership of this case.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing in any way.
Yeah. And that's how I see that in your book. And I just wanted to make that clear to people because I think it's really important because he is highly critical of everything that went on. And he's highly critical, in my opinion. You could tell me if I'm wrong, because it doesn't, 2 + 2 in Moscow equals 5. It doesn't equal, it equals 4 to us though. It equals 4 to us.
I have a whole section on that in the book too. And I talk about confirmation bias and the way that the system works, right? But that's human as well. That when you look at this vast sea of possibilities, and then all of a sudden Brian Koberger emerges and you go, does this fit? Did he have a white car? Did he have the gap in cell tower pings? Does all the information fit? Yes. So that's our guy, and you go after him. That is typical. That is common to criminal investigations. Once you pick somebody, all the evidence fits the hole, like a square peg or what. When you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right?
Right.
And for better or worse, in the listen, that's why we have an innocent project and we have all these various wrongful convictions and all these things in society, because I say it in the book, I say we all believe the American system of justice is the best in the world. And I do. I've lived in a lot of countries in my life.
Absolutely, I agree.
But it's not perfect. We know it's not perfect, but people are doing the best they can. In this case, based on what I've seen, did they get it all right? No. But should I be fair and at least understand their perspectives? I want to look at what Ann Taylor Saw did and argue.
The foundation wasn't there though, so nothing can be right.
Well, we know that. You and I know that because we're now looking at detailed evidence, right? But you run for prosecutor in Latah County or whatever, and
I'm firing these people. What are you doing? Like the tape is all the way out where the cars are on the street, and why is Warner standing at the door? They didn't even process that door, the front door, because they just trampled and standing in there and just talking shop and talking about going to California and shit like that. I mean, this was just on a level of like what you were trained. F. Like even if it was a bike, even if somebody got their bike stolen.
Well, should we talk about that? Should we talk about training? I mean, realistically,
we're not going to talk about
these up.
We're saying that
is crazy. Shut up, Whitcomb, and let's just go with what you think. But there's a reality of what they get for training. When I started out as an FBI agent, I was in Missouri.
Well, I don't want to talk about training. Training's
okay. Well, it's a big deal because if you want to know what they did, you should know what they were trained to do. That's in my opinion.
Well,
you know how many people at the Moscow Police Department were trained in how to investigate a quadruple homicide? 0.
No, but it's like this. It's like in basketball. Your shot, okay?
Yeah.
Your shot is fundamental. Your shot, you're taught. It doesn't matter if you're shooting a 3-point shot. It doesn't matter if you're shooting a free throw. It does not matter if you're shooting a layup. Your shot is never going to be different. And it's going to be different just with your legs and how much power you use. But the foundation of how you play defense and being in a stance and all that stuff, it doesn't matter if you're playing Little League or against a D1 school. You get trained the fundamentals to have it so that you don't fuck up. You're gonna.
But you gotta have the fundamentally
right. Yeah, you have to.
But if you don't get it,
how you would go about doing a bike, someone that's a little bike, if you cut corners your entire career because it's I'm just fucking here in Moscow and we just do minors in possession, blah blah. Then what do you think is going to happen when something like this happens? Like it's
exactly
because I've never done it. Because I don't follow the rules. And guess what? The leadership is allowing it. Why are these reports written 3-4 months later, weeks later, years later? This is crazy.
Yeah, that I agree with 100%.
And then how do people debrief instead they did these meetings every fucking day, twice a day in the morning and at night? How so we're all basically talking because nobody can ever look at a report because nothing is in black and white. how are you knowing what's going on if you have nothing to read because no one's writing reports? How are you debriefing? I'm sitting here and everybody's going to talk. Our debriefing sessions must be fucking 5-6 hours a day.
Well, I mean, I know the answer to that too. It's not what you want to hear, but I know the answer to that too. But yeah, listen, I'm not saying about bad points. These things start off as chaos. They always start off as chaos, and they settle down. Those first few days, it was chaos, unequivocal.
Well, I just think that they're processing the scene, and that's what they should be doing. They should be taking their time, and they should be processing the scene. And then you have your interview team. I thought it was looked like it was good in terms of like, hey, go interview the different people, and you're gonna put people in teams, and you're gonna focus like, hey, this is the people that are gonna talk to, like the Sigma, the fraternities and the sororities.
Well, they had a victimology team. They had an intel team. They had a forensic team. They had various teams. Yes, they did. Yeah,
and so. Then let's move here to the Eric Gower, the infamous Eric Gower, the driver that night.
Right.
The private driver.
Right.
Okay. Did you know that he played Santa Claus and he was Santa for like the PD when the kids come and you sit on your lap and they give presents out?
I had no idea.
Did you know that his wife worked for the police department?
I think I saw something, but I can't say yes, but it rings a bell, but I did not look at that in great detail, but I did not know about Santa.
Did the defense team know, or if you know this, that where Eric Gower did his interview, his second one, because Blaker had the first one, absolutely pathetic, but then they talked to him a second time, and they did it at the station, and then when they wanted to process his car, you're aware that he just vacuumed the shit out of it, right?
No, but yes, I am aware of that.
Right
but
before.
I didn't see it. I didn't see anything. If I made how do I say this? I'm not disputing anything, but there were behaviors. He was not a suspect at first. Therefore, he makes a living driving as an Uber driver. Maybe he'd clean up his car. I don't think that.
Well, he made statements in his first interview that he never went back over to the King Road area after dropping off the girls. And knowing that he did multiple times.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time on that. So some of the stuff.
That's who Dylan texted the 210 and the 213.
Yes,
back and forth.
Right.
But the other thing is because where his interview then led to for them to go, hey, we don't want to like look at your car here. We're gonna have you drive over to, and where this location was right behind where you would travel out. That they say the Consagna, whatever that road was, to like that the killer took out of the, with the car. Right there is where there's like a building. It's like a maintenance building, and that's where they had him drive to, and do this, looking at the car out. They didn't process shit. They took pictures. But it was really interesting to me because that's right where this white car disappears at.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like, and that's the cops have like, that's their property. That's the city's property where they're having like different cars. So did the defense mention anything about that?
Nothing that I saw, which doesn't mean they didn't. Nothing that I saw. And the only thing I would say is that during that time period, there were so many people on the horizon that, I mean, you going back now and looking at it has weight, and your questions are great. Looking at what was going on at that time, there were so many compelling names on their list of people that they were running down with a really small number of people. So I want to make sure that people realize that my answer is a yes, no, or I don't know. Because I'm not going to say something if I don't really know what you're talking about. And they go, well, why doesn't he know this? And the answer is because, I wrote a book about what I know, right?
Yeah,
so
that's
Lana, you are the future of where this goes, and I want to help. But
I know that you do. That's why
But I'm all about saying, right on. How can I help you? Right.
So
things I don't.
Well, because Eric Gower doesn't make an appearance in your book, right?
Well, no, I talk about him peripherally, but I do not go into a lot about Eric Gower. No, I don't.
Okay. I think it's because there's just, like you said, when people were interviewed and they were saying certain stuff and people weren't paying attention to it. There's a kid that was asked about like what different type or what vehicle does Eric Gower drive? To pick up the girls, and how he's like, he's giving people free rides, and he's all claiming that he doesn't, and they eventually pay and stuff like that. He's like, oh, he's always in different cars. Did you hear that?
I don't know if I heard that, but obviously about they would pay him on the side. And the answer for somebody who's ever worked driving DoorDash or anything else is you start making side deals and you're going to get fired, right? So if you're an Uber driver,
he wasn't doing it on the clock though.
It's what?
He wasn't. So when he was off the clock after before they ever picked up Maddie and Kaylee.
What I'm saying is within the environment of this conversation, we're focusing on him. And you ask really compelling questions, and I want to know the answers to those questions.
Well, he shuts off his Uber app. So if you he shut off his Uber app, but he left on his Lyft app. But he goes home, and he says he waits at home, and then he ends up getting this call. And are you aware that he went to Indian Hills? That's where the white car originates. You know? No,
but I'm going to frame this and say, if you've read the book, I look chronologically in the book at things like blood spatter and physical evidence and things that were wrong with chains of custody, and I've used police documents. You and people that follow you are an army of people looking at all these things, and I say, right on. I mean, this is compelling stuff. And could I find the answers for you? Yes, I could, and will. I will, right? But
no, I know.
It was not on my horizon. And I'll say, this book is 430 pages long, right? It's a long book.
That's the whole
point. This book should be 43,000 pages long. This should be 10 volumes. Remember we were talking beforehand. I was like, dude, we're going to I need to have you back. You are. I'm not. I mean, I've had enough of this.
No, you're doing good.
You are. You and other people. I've met some incredibly insightful, really dedicated, smart people just that I've talked to thus far. And you know how I feel about you and your work. But you know, we're all in the same thing, looking at it from different angles. But this book does not deal a lot with Eric Gower. But you make great points.
The Google, Brian, you said that they try to make a big deal about Brian Googling all this stuff, and you say that Brian Googled porn only 3 times.
Well, okay, so yes, that is accurate. That's true. But I had access to everything that went through his cell phone from when he bought the phone, when he moved to Washington, until they seized it and downloaded it, right? And those communications were to his family. He liked the New York Yankees. He liked dogs. He liked his dog, and he liked and he loved his family, and that was his life. His email content, or his Google, his non-text message data transfers, which could be emails and Google searches and Amazon purchases and things like that, was I had access to a much broader number of data points, and I did the very best I could to look at things that stood out. And what stood out to me is how few things stood out. I mean, it was very, very milquetoast. It was nothing in his private moments thinking that he's going to get accused of a quadruple homicide and plead guilty to homicide. There's nothing that ties him not just to the victims, but to anything along those lines. And I'll say this, you don't have to believe me. You can read the book and say he's full of shit. However, Bill Thompson did this. No. What I'm saying is your viewers could say, shut up, Whitcomb. What I'm saying to you, Lana, is that if there were any evidence of anything even mildly disturbing in any of those data dumps, Bill Thompson would have had it front and center throughout this prosecution. Does that make sense? It's not just that I found nothing. They found nothing.
Yeah, this was a campaign of bullshit. It's like,
well, Bill Thompson has never gone out in public, nor has any cop or anybody else gone out and said, you don't know what's in his files. You don't know what he did in his private time. You know why? Because he didn't. So I'm just saying that. Did
you see the celebrate of his phone? How many deletions were in did you see, was he going through and like deleting a bunch of stuff? Was there any evidence?
Nothing that I saw, but you're better at that than I am. I saw you do an analysis one time. And again, I didn't watch anybody but you because you had some stuff that was so compelling. But I didn't know that you could look at a cell dump that you had exposure to and tell what was a chat and what was a text and what was different things, and that you could say where a phone was based on, you did that whole piece that I thought was very, very compelling. And I might be able to help you with that, but I don't know. We'll have to come back.
We're going to get into that, like the little nugget.
Let's get into that because you're way above my pay grade in certain things. No question.
Well, I just like the fact that you were like, you made a point to say there isn't like this he Googled porn 3 times. And
yeah. I mean, he's a 27-year-old man, and you do things in your private moments, right? We all do, right? He did.
And so like to say that there's just nothing there to support this rage, angry, because that's what we're about to get into. There's no evidence of Brian Kohlberger being a violent, angry, rageful, hateful human.
He was a bizarre dude. Nobody would argue that. Ann Taylor wouldn't argue that. Ann Taylor filed a motion in limine trying to prevent the prosecution from referring to him as a psychopath. Right?
Yeah.
This is not just a colloquy of society and the podcast community. This is what she was trying to get the prosecution not to say in court. Everybody knew Brian Kohlberger is a very unusual guy. His parents knew it. His friends knew it. His coworkers knew it. Everybody knew it. So many people say, well, he's a weird guy. He had to be a killer. And I say, well, what? I mean, I never really understood that. So did he have bizarre characteristics in his interactions and his social norms, his cues and things like that? Absolutely. Is there anything that indicates violence? And no. And I'll say this. The FBI has launched, I don't know how many television shows based on profilers, right? They're actually behavioral analysts. And they say, you can look at a crime scene 2 ways. Forensically, meaning the evidence and what it shows you in terms of physics and physiology, biology, chemistry. And then you can look at the behavioral aspects. Why did somebody, Brian Kohlberger or anybody else, why did they go out into that house and kill those women the way they did in the manner that they did? That is a viable part of criminal investigations in the world today. And BAU4 was a part of this investigation. No question about it. So we'll come back to those questions. But yes, Brian Kohlberger being weird. Like, again, I saw a podcast that somebody did that I was involved. And this person said, I can tell you right now, he was a hedonistic sex killer, murderer. Yeah. And that the crimes were signs of picarism. And I'd say this right off the bat. This is the stuff you're listening to. Picarism hasn't been a thing since 1995. I mean, I laughed out loud when I heard that. First of all, picarism looks very different than anything I've seen in thousands of crime scene photos in this particular case. And then to say he's a hedonistic sex killer, it doesn't even fall within a category within behavioral assessment analysis units catalog of things like that you could look at. So, and I look at that and I go, wait, stop. Was this an issue of CSI? I mean, what are we talking about here where you just go out and say absolutely anything you want? I'm not saying I'm an authority, but I can tell you I went through the training and I did it as a career. So I have at least an opinion based on some kind of an experience. Brian Kohlberger was a weird dude. Does that mean automatically that he's a homicidal sex maniac? Bill Thompson himself said in the change of plea hearing, I will say up front, this was not a sexually motivated crime. That's the prosecutor saying that. So to go back in a podcast and say, I know what this was. It was picarism. And it was, I saw that and I go, is this really what we've come down to now? Is this really what we're talking about?
Well, you make a point in the book. And you talk about it, about the car, about supposedly cleaning this car, right? Bill Thompson.
Kohlberger's car, you mean?
Yeah, cleaning the car.
Yeah.
And so something that you point out in the book was, did he really just say the word, like there was like crud and stuff? And I was laughing because I was like, yeah.
I mean, you watched that hearing, right? And he's listing first of all, this is a horrific quadruple homicide of 4 young people, probably the worst crime in Moscow history. And this is a change of plea hearing in a death penalty prosecution where Brian Kohlberger is going to stand up and plead guilty. And he's reciting the evidence against him. And he said he went back and they found nothing, including those places where you put your crud. And I'm thinking to myself, I saw that car. There was a lot of crud in that car. There was a lot of crud in that car. Band-Aids and
it wasn't like it was like this spotless car. And so that brings me to this
photographs.
I don't know
what he's talking about.
So something that you mentioned, you're like, I have no idea why he wanted to bring that up and talk about like, where he went and whatever. So it got me thinking, and it's like, honestly, it kind of blew up his, we see Brian Kohlberger's, supposedly he did all of this. And this dude is just going to be getting in and out of his car that is a mess, like that could potentially be a mess, and going to all these places and being on all these cameras. But they said that he cleaned it. So when did that all happen? When he was, just off and doing whatever?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you look at it's not just the car, it's his apartment in his parents' house, right? They went through his apartment. I think a lot of those pictures are public now. They got the contents of his vacuum cleaner. They checked everything. They did a very thorough investigation of his apartment. And let's go back to the knife sheath. The knife sheath, the DNA found on the knife sheath, the snap of the knife sheath, was a small number of human cells. It was not a blood stain. It was a small number of human cells, and the DNA.
Well, we're going to go to the knife sheath. Let's talk about
what I'm
you
saying.
Tell the world this, though, because you put in your book about the knife sheath, which is awesome. We've all been wondering, when you watch the body cam and they go back into that room, is that knife sheath on any body cam footage out there?
No, it isn't. But look, I had to mention it for this reason.
There it is.
Well, no, I've got to qualify. Come on now, because people hold me to saying things. People hold me to saying things specifically, right? Is the body cam footage out there? The Mitch Nunez body cam footage. I think it's been public.
It's redacted for the part that when he goes into the room.
Okay, so I encourage everybody to go back and look at the video. So when they go into the room, Officer Warner goes in first, and he goes around to the edge of the bed, right? And Officer Nunez is standing in the doorway, his point of view toward the bed. You can see the scene. You can see Officer Warner standing to the side of the bed, and he has a flashlight, and he is flashing the two victims, and then the part where he skips over the part where we were supposed to have found the knife sheath, where everybody believes they found the knife sheath, and then he looks down at his feet for a prolonged period of time, right? He does not stop. You can see a white part of the bed at the edge of the comforter where Maddie Mogan's thigh is coming out of the bed. That's where the knife sheath was. In photographs taken during the crime scene analysis, it's very obvious that the knife sheath is sticking about 4 inches out of the bed, off the edge of the bed, against a white sheet barely covered by the comforter. There's an exposed piece of sheet, and then Maddie's upper torso, right? Officer Nunez is standing where his knee would have been inches from that knife sheath if it were there. He did not look at it at all, pause with his flashlight. He pauses to look at the floor, and it would mean nothing at all, but you can't see it. So would somebody argue, well, it's the camera angle? And I would say maybe, but I mean, I've looked at it at great length.
But Nunez didn't put it in his report.
Neither of them did. Neither Warner nor Nunez mentioned the fact that there was a knife sheath in the scene of a horrific murder. They didn't mention it at all. And the only reason, Lana, this is very important, and I go into I'm very specific in the book. The only reason I mention this at all, the only reason I care or mention it at all is because when Detective Talbot came out and did his crime scene analysis, he wrote on page 2, item number 14, K-bar sheath found on floor next to victim number 3. He was very specific, and it was handwritten contemporaneous with the seizure of evidence. So you take those things together, and the obvious question was, well, was it on the floor and somebody just picked it up and put it on the bed so you could take a better photograph? Where was the sheath, right? Is that, people will say, well, the case wouldn't have been thrown out for that. And I'd say, well, maybe not, but is it worth discussing? Yes, absolutely. Because some DNA ended up on that knife sheath. Where, how? Those things are important to you. If you ever get arrested wrong, for murder, you're going to want to know the answers in order to build your defense. So the reason I brought that up is because, again, the butterfly effect, small things at the beginning become big things down the line. In my opinion, whatever you feel, it was a typo, or, he wrote the wrong thing down, whatever you think, it's still a problem.
But don't they have to go back? Isn't it protocol to go back and correct that? And you're supposed to put a line in the notes, and then you pick a little initial, that's that's what you're trained to do.
Well, when you put it in the bag, but that's a whole other issue.
No, not the bag. That's the bag. I'm talking about your notes. Are you talking? When he's writing in his notes.
Typically, you have handwritten notes, but in this particular case, he's got to seize the evidence and put it back. And the report itself. Now you have a form. It's just a bunch of lines that says Idaho State Police. The photograph of it, and then you just fill in the blanks with a pen because you're physically picking up 100 different elements of evidence, and you put it in a bag and you just write it out on a page. So that would be your notes. And that became a report. But that became a report how long after the fact?
Yeah, not till December 6th.
Yeah,
which we're going to
almost 3 weeks, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, putting the whole thing together, it goes from there. But maybe we're spending too much time. The knife sheath, the issue of the knife sheath is a big issue.
Well, no, I don't think that we're spending too much time on it because I like how in your book you're breaking it down that, hey, in anybody's body worn camera that you're trying to break down and look frame by frame, you could argue it in a courtroom that show that to the jury, they're not going to see a sheath. And it's either a great angle for the defense just because this camera angle didn't catch it. But what supports it is none of these guys ever wrote in their report that they saw a sheath.
Well, here's another. First of all, yes, I personally agree with that because I've seen the unredacted video. But here's another issue. Here's another issue. And I talked to this about, I think it was Birdie. Do you know Birdie? I don't know about the community, but Birdie really had some great points and really did a great job in a lot of different ways. But he had a photograph that I would not have, I wouldn't have brought up. But he had a series of photographs that was really fascinating for anybody that watched this podcast. Go back and look at it. But he had photographs of the bed on the third floor where Maddie and Kaylee were found. And the photographs depict the bed after the comforter was taken off the victims and after the victims were taken out of the bed. The pillows were taken out of the bed. So there was nothing in the room on the third floor, except the mattress and the sheet or whatever it was that was over the mattress. You with me?
Okay.
There was one thing in the bed. The only thing in the bed was that knife sheath. So my first question is, how do you get a comforter out of the bed? How do you get two human beings out of the bed and the pillows out of the bed and everything? How do you get everything out of the bed? And somehow you don't touch the knife that was under the sheath. I'm sorry, I gotta say that. The sheath that was under Maddie Mogan's thigh. How somehow did you not take that? Did that knife sheath not get moved?
Not fall on the ground or move.
Not fallen or get moved or whatever. So the implication, of course, is that it was moved at some point to put it back so they could take a photograph of it, right?
Is that what the prosecution was saying?
Nobody said anything, and so I want to come back to why Ann Taylor didn't bring these things up, because I think it's very important. We'll come back around, right? What I'm trying to say is that when you look at the crime scene, the discrete crime scene within the third floor bedroom, and you look at the series, they took pre-search videos, they took photographs, and they have reports, and we have Officer Nunez's body camera. And when you look at all of those things, something starts to make you wonder what is actually going on. One of those things is that somehow we're led to believe in the photographs taken by the Idaho State Police, somehow we are shown a photograph of a bed with a sheet on it, and the knife sheath is somewhat in place with a placard that says number 14. And that knife sheath is in that bed where they have already removed the comforter, they've removed two human victims and everything else in the bed. And somehow doing that, it didn't disturb the placement of the knife sheath. Why would they do that? Why would you do all of that and just leave the knife sheath in place? It doesn't make any sense to me. So is that proof of anything? No. Is it an indication that things
It's reasonable doubt at trial. I mean, that's what it is.
Thank you.
So that's what it is. Let's talk about, you talk about in the book, 5 white cars. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, okay. And again, I've got to be very careful because people have said, well, there were 4, or there were 6, or there were 3, or there were 8. And the problem with this thing, I have all of the identification sheet. I have looked at, I say I have these things. I don't mean I have them now. I mean, I have reviewed them in the research for this book, okay? And there's a difference. But the police prepared various representations of all the videotape images of the cars. Are you with me?
Yep.
And they change. Like, just for example, I don't want to start something else, but I have seen photographs of 50, I think it was 54, forgive me, 50, more than 50, I think it was 54 different video cards or devices that were downloaded from various cameras that they found, surveillance cameras. That's how they tracked the path of the car. They went out and did a huge canvas of they went door to door saying, do you have video? That's how they tracked the progress of the white car. From those videos, they picked the best frames that they could compare to try to find out what car this is.
To compare it though to what? To compare it to the one on 1112, because that came back as not being able to be comparable. And that's the issue. And won on that though.
Well, okay.
Because
so
Jennings lied.
I talk about this a great deal in the book, and I think you have to read the whole thing to make sense of it. But the bottom line is this: at some point, the police tied Brian Koberger to a white car, or a white car to Brian Koberger. It depends on what you believe.
The question is that was the white car okay, for example, they went out and got a search warrant for Jack Showalter, who lives within walking distance. Okay.
Right.
So when did you determine that this couldn't have been a crime that was committed by somebody on foot, or at least
Well, I'm not
somebody on
saying-
foot in the area? And then
Well,
I'm
we
saying
can come
then.
back to that. We can come back to that. But you asked me about the white car, and what I was trying to explain is there's
well, that's what leads to it.
there's a lot of white cars. I mean, a lot of white cars. They researched
Agreed.
every white four-door sedan registered in the state of Idaho, and they started working their way through them. Started out as a Nissan Sentra they were looking for. It became a 2011 to 2013 Elantra. It eventually became a 2013 to 15 Elantra. It changed over time. There were Bolos. They were looking for this white car because they did see a white car. They just didn't know what it was, right? But then they went out and got all the videos.
They didn't have it as an Elantra until they came out with November 25th, but it was already found. Brian Kohlberger was already found before
Right.
they.
But what I was trying to say is, I was trying to answer your question about 5 cars. And my answer is that number is ambiguous because there are so many white cars identified, and the police had to take the 5 white cars that they thought looked the same, so they would all meld into one car, which became the 2015 Elantra. Does that make sense? I've seen in the file.
They all had to be the same car, because otherwise it's reasonable doubt if you're going to not say that all the sightings was that car.
First of all, that's correct. But the point is, there is reasonable doubt, because Bill Thompson and some of the people I've seen in podcasts, they've said, it was Kohlberger's car. It was Kohlberger. And I said, the prosecution has never once said they saw Brian Kohlberger in the car. The prosecution has presented photographs, which they claim is the same car in different places. And we've all seen the video of that white car proximal to the house around the time of the crimes. So does it make sense? You go, there's a white car. Brian Kohlberger drove a white car. It's Brian Kohlberger's car. Can you make that stretch? Yes. Is it forensic?
Yeah, that's
evidence?
what they were going to try to present.
That's what they were going to present. It is a death penalty case. It is a death penalty case. The standard should be higher than, we've got a bunch of blurry video and we think it's a white Elantra.
Okay.
It took a long time to get there.
So
You asked about the 5. I'm saying there were a bunch of them.
yeah, so we're going to talk about that right here. So there's an FBI report. Agent Hill did it. And he's like, here's all these sightings, okay? And he turns in this report. And at any point in time, did the defense find out, because I figured it out and can prove it, did the defense ever once find out that they have 2 vehicles between 2 of the cameras due to it is impossible to be at point B, okay, at a time frame that you're, like, let's say at that 1311 Sunset Mart, okay, Agent Hill comes out with a report and he says that camera's, off 1 minute and 43 seconds. And so you have to add basically 1 minute and 43 seconds when you're doing this, but the 1125 Ridge Road camera, it's accurate to the timestamp of real time, so that you don't have to like adjust it. Well, if you start the car when they're saying it's going through, which is the one that they're doubling down on, saying it doesn't have a license plate, if you add 1 minute and 43 seconds to when it's going through, the timestamp is after. Okay, so by the time it gets to 11:25, it's saying a certain timestamp. It's impossible for it to be that timestamp because it's before it ever got to 1311.
I've not seen anything indicating that the defense had identified that or was going to use that, but I have seen evidence that a lot of things didn't make sense. And I believe the defense against the white car would have been robust. I believe that.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, because then Hill became the rebuttal, and then he went ahead and doubled down, and he switches then the time at 1311, what time the timestamp says. And it's like, wow, now you're just blatantly trying to see if anybody can catch this, because you guys have just been getting away with murder with Hitler, to the point that I was just curious if these are things that they found and that they were going to use because it's there.
The answer is I don't know. I've seen no indication. But the answer is I don't know, but that's because I didn't see anything that indicated that.
Mm-hmm. And
It's
I
the
think it's
first I've heard anybody talk about.
and this just goes to say, when you were talking about Ann Taylor having like no team compared to the state having literally everybody at their beck and call, and Ann Taylor actually put a motion about that. I mean, how ridiculous is that? That their arsenal is just endless, and Ann Taylor doesn't. I mean, how is she supposed to go?
I wrote about that in the book too. I mean, you got to be fair. I don't care what your opinion is, Brian. Look, I'll say everybody goes, Brian Koberger pled guilty to these crimes. He's guilty. End of story. And I go, okay, fine, fine, no problem, no problem. I don't dispute that in any way. Do I also say that there are massive, massive holes in how we got there to begin with? And I'd say yes, that's the case too. But I look back on this thing and say, Ann Taylor, in my strong opinion, believed that she tried through motions to eliminate evidence before it ever got to a trial. And we see them all. We see the supplemental discoveries. We see the Franks hearing. We see motions in limine. We see all the legal proceedings trying to knock down this evidence, even to where Bill Thompson couldn't refer to Koberger as a psychopath. And in the vast majority of them, she was shot down. So when she got to the end, she said, well, I've tried everything I can as a lawyer to work the legal system to throw out this evidence. I think there was a lot more of that than the logical, chronological infliction of reasonable doubt. Does that make sense? It was legal wrangling with the evidence far more than it was the evidence itself. And I'll say this, to prove it, I'll say this. I talked to Turvey, obviously, Dr. Brent Turvey.
I love him.
Yeah, I mean, you say what you want about Turvey. He's a
mind.
highly animated guy. I've never met a human being in my life, and I worked in law enforcement a long time. I've never met a human being in my life that was more committed to truth, and he is a smart son of a bitch. So his personality rubs some people wrong, but he said to me. He came in at the very, very end. I mean, Ann Taylor hired various.
Well, do you know the date on that?
I don't, but he'll tell you. He'll talk to you. He'll tell you himself. But it was very late. I think I don't know if you know this. I wrote it in the book.
How did he ever get hooked up on this case then? Like,
great question. This was 2025. So I mean, this is way late in the process. He was brought in just to look at the sheath. So Ann Taylor identified many of the things that you and I are talking about right now with the sheath. She said had obvious problems with the sheath. She and Becca Barlow in particular. So she hired an expert. His name was Dr. Brent Turvey. And when she hired him, she did not tell him what this case was. She didn't say this is the Idaho murders. She never mentioned the name Brian Koberger. She just sent him a portion of evidence specifically for the sheath, not the bodies, not the house, not the second floor, not the cars, nothing, just the sheath. And she said, does this make sense? He did an analysis, and that came back to his larger involvement in the case. But when he got involved in this case, he had no idea what case it was. He just saw the knife sheath, and that's what started.
So is part of the reason that he got so late in the game due to Sutton not putting in her report until December of 2025, and then he was coming into...
No, Sutton's report was after that. He was brought in because at that point, it looked like it was going to trial, right? They had a trial date.
I mean, 2024, December 2024. When did she put in her report?
I don't know.
They were running late. Like they were just trying to
Well, okay, so her report was her report was 2025 as well. Her report was fairly close to the trial because at that point, she wrote in her report that she never went to look at the evidence. She only looked at photographs. The evidence, the house was torn down at that point.
Yeah, she went to the house, but everything was out of it. December 21st. So she was called to September of 2023. She got to the house December 21st of 2023. And then she doesn't, I have it down as she doesn't garnish because that was the big problem that the state or that the defense was saying, like their initial disclosures for their experts need to be in, like these reports. And then now the first time I'm hearing it is that, which makes sense, Turvey getting a hold of this case is so late in the game. So whatever he was then supplying to Ann Taylor is like right before this plea deal.
Right. So you bring up a very, very important point. And, a lot of very smart people watch these podcasts and they say, well, what about this and what about that? And I embrace it. I mean, that should be the process. If you have a perspective and it's based on fact, I want to hear it. Right. But this is a very important one. I brought up the thing about the chain of custody and somebody came out and said, well, I think it was that podcast I was talking about before with that defense, whoever that woman was, that expert. But people immediately said, well, why would Ann Taylor not use the chain of custody in Brian Koberger's defense if it was such a big deal? And the answer from Dr. Turvey in the book is, written out in the book, is because he didn't give it to her until something like 3 days. Don't quote me on 3 days. It was before. 3 or 4 days. 4 days? Okay, it's in the book. So 4 days before the plea was the first time Ann Taylor ever saw that evidence. And one might believe 4 days prior to the plea that the gig was up, that she had already moved on from the evidence and was moving toward a plea. So the answer to many of these questions, and people say, well, why didn't this? There is a plausible answer for many of these questions, and that is one. Ann Taylor did not know about many of the problems with the knife sheath until just days before the change of plea.
So what was Matt Nodel's position in this, like for her? Matt Nodell?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there is whatever that would have been internal, and it would have been privileged, and I've never seen that. I don't know. The answer is I don't.
So like, because he was hired, he was there with her like day one to go check out the crime scene, and he's the one that caught all of the numbering. Like, what the heck's going on here? Like,
the numbering was all wrong. Her first report was all wrong, which throws up a lot of stuff. But let's be really straightforward. Paulette Sutton was brought in to provide a forensic analysis of the crime scene that was going to go to trial. That was the whole point in doing that. The investigation was done. They were preparing for trial at that point. And she was brought in, just like the CAS team, the FBI CAS team had a report for trial on cell tower pings. That was ready to go. All these things had already been prepared. These experts they'd already moved in. They had hotel rooms. They were all set to go to trial. And this had all been prepared. Paulette Sutton's report at the end threw a big wrench in the works when Turvey came in and looked at her report, because then it became an argument, and that exposed things like misnumbering or renumbering of exhibits and things. It went downhill from there. It didn't matter at that point because it became a change of plea. Koberger pled guilty to 4 murders and he's doing life in prison. It didn't matter.
In the book, you talk about Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's
about to come up a lung over here. Were you aware that the phrase from Vampire Diaries, it's in a certain episode where it says, "I'm here to help you," is what they say to the people?
I only know that because I think I heard it from you. And then I looked and then I researched it and I saw that. But I'll tell you,
like nuts?
It's nuts, but it's not nuts when you think about, let's take these witnesses out and just look at my experience working in law enforcement. And you can look, you can read TV shows, you can Google it, you can do anything you want. Just Google false recollection among witness statement. The reason a lot of eyewitnesses don't end up in a trial is because they are notoriously wrong. I used to teach this at the FBI Academy. The statements made by witnesses in this case can be tracked to things in the house. If you look at let's go to the bushy eyebrows, right? If you look at the wall boards in that house, the second floor bathroom, all of Dylan's walls, you look at all of you look at many of the things on the walls throughout that house, there is a preponderance of bushy eyebrows. And
everywhere.
I mean, in your face, bushy eyebrows, right?
Every
so if
room.
you have a traumatic experience, if you wake up at 4 a.m. and you see a guy standing outside your room, you might remember, "I'm here to help you" from the Vampire Diaries you watched 2 hours earlier when you were drunk, and bushy eyebrows that you saw when you turned around to look at your wall, right? I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying witnesses remember things surrounding an event because the mind does odd things under duress, right? So as that has gone to trial, that's not going to come out at trial. The bushy eyebrows were never going to come out at trial, never, because of what the defense knew, and because she said so many times, Dylan said so many times, "I don't know if they were bushy eyebrows, or they was, but I don't remember. I'm not sure if it's real or not." So those things were never going to end up in trial. I'm just saying, witness testimony. You know, people go at Dylan for various reasons. The 8 hours, and I know all the talk about Dylan. Some things make sense to question. Some things are pretty easy to explain, like thinking you saw bushy eyebrows when they're everywhere in the house. And it's important to distinguish between those things, in my opinion.
Well, I think in the book you make a really good point, which is where Dylan's room is located. So the whole thing what I was going to go with the whole Vampire Diaries thing is I was notorious for doing this, leaving the TV on, right? And it's still playing when you like leave out of that room. And so if you're then in your bedroom where Dylan would have been, and she could have been hearing whatever could have actually just been on the TV, right? Because you make a really good point in your book to say where Dylan's bed was like 9 feet. Where Xana's room is 9 yards.
Well, okay, let's be specific. From the top of her bed. So
Yeah.
typical construction of that kind, floor to ceiling is 8 feet, right? Or very, very close to it. Standard
I
construction.
like the
building
analogy.
codes. So her bed was
Mhm.
the top of her bed to the top of Maddie's bed was approximately 8 or 9 feet, right?
Mhm.
But hearing the voice, she heard nothing on the third floor, nothing. But she heard Xana or Kaylee, depending on the interview, down in the bedroom outside Xana's room, and you do basic measurements based on things in the room. It's 27, 30 feet, something along those lines, which is a long ways to hear somebody in a very low voice saying, "I'm here to help you."
Exactly. And I think
why
it was
did
a
she
really
do
good
it? I
way
don't
that
know. I'm
you
not saying why. But
Yeah, I think it was a really good when you guys see that in the book. It really puts something into perspective with you because, for example, in college, when people are having sex like they do, okay, you hear your roommate and the bed's going, just moving or whatever. Based on what you wrote in the book, based on Turvey, which is what I want to get into here, which would be, he actually gave like an order that he thinks that this happened, and he says Kaylee was definitely attacked first. And it was more of like the to silence her by whether it was strangulation, but this person got on top of her and was like using physical force with blunt force, and then
well, can we go through that in detail because it's very, very important. All right, let's talk about one thing that nobody's really talked about thus far, and I heard it came up in a podcast. Somebody made some comment and something about one of the podcasts about Koberger targeting these women. And I want to say one thing very, very specifically. Dr. Turvey and other experts, behavioralists and physical evidence analysts, say this unequivocally. The autopsy reports are written out. They wrote it, not me. They wrote it in these autopsy reports. Kelly Goncalves suffered a constriction injury that produced a condition called petechia in her lips, which is, you can Google it, right? It's little dots in her lips, which is burst blood vessels, which is a specific mechanism, which is occlusion of blood. Pressure builds up and it bursts the blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
It was created by somebody either choking her, and I say choking, people will say, well, there's no ligature marks, and I would say, well, you can't tell. Or she was suffocated somehow. But somebody went hands-on and strangled or somehow tried to smother her, something to that effect. That was one mechanism of injury. The second mechanism of injury was blunt force trauma to the head, which according to prosecution was beyond what you could inflict with your hands. Nobody beat her with their hands. They beat her with an object which has never been identified or discovered. They took it out of the house when they left. The police reports, autopsy reports say Kaylee Goncalves, her skull injuries, her hard tissue, her bones in her face, her teeth, that was caused by a blunt object which has never been discussed. Nobody's talked about it. They talk about the knife sheath because they found a K-bar because they found the sheath, but not that instrument. But it was not found in the house. Okay, that's injury number 2. Injury number 3 was edged weapons wounds. They're penetrative wounds or slash wounds that created. Sorry, I thought somebody was trying to break in my house, but it's a good thing I didn't pull a gun on camera, huh? And the third was these significant wounds. All of those wounds suggest rage beyond anything you see among the others. None of the other victims were asphyxiated, producing petechia, strangled, or anything. They were not beaten in the same manner, and they were her injuries were unique, which lead many people, including Dr. Turvey and me, to believe that she was the intended victim because the violence of injury inflicted on her far exceeded what it would take to kill her, and it expresses different things. Dr. Turvey said the disfigurement was to destroy her identity, so because he didn't want to see her face. All of these things are I'm not going to go into. But here's one Here's one thing that's important. Kaylee
the
did
door-
not. I'm
I
sorry,
wanted
go
you to talk about the trajectory of that, because that was what I found really, really compelling. Was nobody wants to talk about the trajectory of what was going on to the door and that type of cast off.
Of the cast. All right. So there's different types of blood transfer. Anytime you create a penetrative injury in a crime scene like this, you're going to have blood. When you have that blood, oftentimes because of the mechanism of the injury, of the infliction of the injury, it spreads the blood around. That's obvious. We know there was a knife involved. We know there's a blunt force trauma. All of that spread blood in patterns that you can analyze. There's blood on the walls, there's blood on the ceilings. And because of the distance of that blood transfer as spatter, you can calculate the force it would take to do that. And it's very, very simple. You bring up sports. I know you play sports. If you throw a baseball 6 inches, it takes a very small amount of force to project a baseball 6 inches, right? If you're throwing it from deep left center to home plate, it has a tremendous amount of force. You can calculate the violence of the infliction of the injury based on the transfer of the blood, in this case, spatter. You with me?
Yep.
And the violence in the transfer of blood in that manner, that alone shows significant violence. Why inflict that? You know, when we go back to this one expert I heard said that it was hedonistic sex killing. If the motive is sex, disfigurement and rage killing with dozens of wounds when one would suffice, they're not the same behavior. It's dramatically different. Bill Thompson said in his change of plea evidence recitation, sex was not the motivation in this crime. This is not me. This is not Dr. Turvey. This is not Ann Taylor. This is Bill Thompson saying this.
Yeah.
So we're clear that the motive for this crime was not sexual assault. None of the victims showed any indication that was the case. Nothing of any kind. So then if that's the case, why were Kaylee's injuries so different than anybody else's? And why were they inflicted in that manner? And then everything goes from there. You know, where's the blunt object? What was the weapon? Why were the bodies moved? And you have all of those questions. But it comes back to this. I've got to get this in because we've been talking about it. The conventional method would be, would be that if a stranger went into that house at 3 o'clock in the morning, bypassed Dylan's room, didn't turn left down the hall to Xana's room, just went straight to the third floor and killed those two women in that bed. If that's the case, we need to remember that Xana didn't live in, Kaylee did not live in that house anymore. She came down for the weekend. She stayed there Friday night. The killer, if we believe expert analysis that Kaylee was the intended victim, the first intended victim because of the nature of her crimes, how would anybody know she was there? It would have to be somebody that knew her. You just couldn't accidentally feel rage to someone that you didn't even live in the house. The fact that she was in that house that night is important behaviorally to the assessment of this violence.
Because there's evidence that Kaylee was trying to either sublet her room, sell stuff in her room. There's evidence of that, right?
Well, there is, but we know this unequivocally. She bought a car outside Moscow and drove down for the weekend. She went to the formal with Dylan on Friday night, went back. We know all of her activities, but we know unequivocally that she didn't live in the house prior to that. She was taking a job in Texas, and she came down, and it very well may have been her last weekend in Moscow. She may have come down to pick up her things and go home. I don't know that, but that's, it's plausible. What we do know is this, that a casual intruder who wanted to get even with her, maybe he met her at the Mad Greek or whatever the case may be, that killer would have to know that she was coming back to Moscow and be in that house on Saturday night when she didn't live in the house. It's certainly worth discussing.
So who's telling you that she didn't live in the house?
Well, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that.
I just didn't know if that was in reports, because I just want to make sure, because
yes, the victimology, it's all in the book. It's all detailed in the book. But people talk in the book about how she planned to move, where she planned to move, where she worked. It was all documented, widely documented.
It's in the
by
book.
police.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all in the book.
And then they're even talking about that night, Dylan and even her statements. We were trying to talk Kaylee into staying, and she thought about it. Like they start talking about that. So I was just curious.
But we do know that she bought the Range Rover at her hometown.
Why is that name? Why is the name of the Range Rover that she bought in a girl named Jasmine?
Because that's all documented. That's all in the book too. I'm so detailed in the book. I tell you how much she bought, how much she paid for the vehicle, full retail.
Yeah.
I mean, full asking price, and how she paid for it. All of those details are in the book. I mean, Lana, would you agree that the detail of this thing is fairly significant?
Oh, yes. That's why I love it. That's why that's why my questions are so detailed, because the book is so detailed that it's like, here's a great piece of information, guys. Chris brought a great point up in the book is, when's the last time you've ever bought a car at sticker price? Raise your hand. I've never bought a car at sticker price.
No, but that's, in terms of who she was, that's one thing to consider, but how she paid for it and why it was still registered to this other person. And the answer
that's what I was going to get into, is why would it be still registered to? Because
if you go and buy a car off Marketplace or wherever you buy a car, it takes time to transfer the plates. You got to go to DMV. You can run it under a temper tag.
So you're saying that she bought the Range Rover off of a person, not off of the dealership?
No, she did buy it from a dealership, but it hadn't changed. I mean, she drove down there on Friday morning, right? Friday morning. She drove down to Moscow from her home a long ways away, and she just hadn't had it transferred over yet. There's no mystery. It's all well documented by police. Why it was somebody else's name. It just hadn't been transferred over the title hadn't been transferred.
But I thought if a dealership was to buy a car from like this person because they're selling the car, wouldn't it be in the dealership's name?
Not necessarily. Well, it wasn't in this case. I can say very clearly, I've seen all the transfer records. I've seen the bill of sale. I've seen all of the financial records, how it was bought, how much. It's all in the book.
Really know the owner?
What the payments were? What's that?
Oh, what were the payments?
I don't know. It's in the book, but I mean.
Oh, no, the payments weren't, though.
Oh, well, maybe I didn't have the payments, but the loan and how much it was paid up front with,
her grandmother.
There was nothing suggestive, nefarious, or otherwise perplexing about that vehicle, why she bought it, or who it belonged to. Zero.
And so they never looked into seeing if Kaylee knew the girl.
Well, they went up and interviewed the guy that sold her the car, and he said X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I don't know. The answer is I don't know. Yeah. But I've seen nothing to suggest in any way that Kaylee knew the woman that he bought the car. In a small town, could you sell a car to a dealership and then I go by and I go, oh, there's Lena's car, I'm going to buy it. It's conceivable, but there's no record of that. No.
No, I just thought it was interesting that the dealership must have got it so quickly and turned it over so quickly and it was still in that other girl's name.
I don't know because I'm not a car dealer, but I don't think that's really that unusual. And it depends on the state. I mean, listen, Idaho is different than Massachusetts or California.
Idaho is different. Amen.
Right? Yeah, amen, right? So, I mean, the answer is I don't know.
Somebody's in the water there.
If you want to go down the rabbit hole on who owned the
car,
I
was just curious about. I thought it was interesting. That's all.
But I documented it as well as I thought necessary in the book. There's no mystery in why she had the car. Maybe there was a mystery in how she planned to pay for it. I don't know. But
what about the mystery behind why doesn't anybody understand that Dylan didn't call Bethany first and it was Bethany that actually called Dylan first?
Because nobody had any information prior to this. I mean, just think about it, Lana. Before documents started coming out, you've covered this in great detail, right? And I got to say,
we know this was known for like forever that Bethany called Dylan first, like this whole alerting that I woke up to Kaylee and all of that, and that she just started calling people. That's just not the facts.
Well, it's not the facts, but I will bet you tomorrow people call up and say Whitcomb said X, Y, and Z, and you go back and you watch it, and I said something else, right? Communication is hard, and as we've rolled through this case and looked at so many different things from so many different perspectives, I think that detail was just not caught by anybody but you, or caught by very few people except you.
So nobody caught the detail that if you put Bethany and Dylan's calls next to each other, they don't overlap.
I can tell you only this. When I wrote this book, I didn't want to know what the world was thinking because I didn't want to chase theories, right?
Yeah.
And when I started this book, I'd never heard of this case at all. I never, before my friends brought me this case, I'd never heard about it. So I purposely did not look at Reddit or YouTube. I don't have any social media. Well, I think somebody told me I had an account the other day. I didn't even know I had it. It's like, but I didn't have anything on purpose. I did not want this investigation tainted by theories or everything that's going on in the ethos, right? So I did see, because of the respect that I earned for you very early on, I did see an episode where you talked about that, and I thought to myself, "Holy shit! I didn't know that. I had no idea."
And
So
I think you're right.
to-
I don't think Ann Taylor and her team were. I mean, I question what they were doing with all the information. Like, I mean, this is
they were drowning. That's what they were doing. I mean, my God.
they just not have. So they didn't have a really like.
Well, they had
That was-
Cy Ray for the cast dump, and they had Dr. Turvey for the
No, I'm talking about like
forensic-
going through the discovery and being like the researcher to put all this stuff together and do a lot of the dot connecting.
No,
Like
she had. I mean, her team was basically 4 people. You know, I mean, and they were working their asses off. Whatever you think about Ann Taylor and her defense team, there were some really accomplished professionals who had a daunting task. Daunting. So, I mean, I'm not judging anybody.
No, I'm not judging either. This is me understanding. I want to know. Like,
The
no
answer
wonder
is you
they didn't
figured
have
out.
anybody. They didn't have
Look,
people.
I think I figured out things in this case.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
Turvey figured out things in this case. I think Mitch Nunez figured out things in this case. And I can tell you, you have figured out things in this case that surprised me. And I think you should pursue them.
Yeah. Chris, we are.
Oh my God.
We're gonna pursue him, baby.
I want to get onto the next book fast, and it's not.
I know.
Crime. You know.
Okay. In the book, you do a great job. Like I said, it is like chronological. I don't know. I'm a fan of the way that it's written, and so if you like the way that my brain operates, I think you're gonna really like this book because it's literally like getting like a workbook, and we get to have so many fill in the blanks that we didn't have before because you're reporting the stuff and putting out reports that are unredacted. And it's like, thank you, because it's so amazing to actually read a report and know what the fuck it's talking about. Like, for example, when you put in like here, this is the report of what, Hunter said, like, here's Hunter's clips and stuff like that. There's stuff in here that was, when we get the reports, they're so redacted that it's like blankety blank did this and went to blankety blank. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like you can't even, you're missing key parts of, because they were just redacting what these people were saying, where they were going, who they were going there with. It's like, it's just wild.
I want to point something out to people in terms of information and getting access to information and things like that. It is subjective and the discretion of a law enforcement agency in what they redact. There's no federal rules of redaction. Like, you don't go through a manual and say, well, we got to redact this. It's elective, and every jurisdiction is different. And in this particular case, I don't know all the details, but I know it happened. They released a bunch of photographs in a dump that were not redacted, and it created outrage, and they took them back. Right. So there's no manual where you sit down and say, we have to redact a birthday, but not a social security number. We have to redact a social security number, but not an address, or an address, but not their middle name. Right. So you'll see, like in the Epstein files, for example, you'll see page after chapter after whatever of these just blanked out pages. Look, I worked in the intelligence community for quite some time. I've had very elevated security clearances, and I have a pretty good grasp of how things are redacted by the federal government based on certain rules when it
the feds aren't even classified. They're just not giving anything out in this case.
No. What I'm trying to say, I'm obviously not making my point very well. What I'm trying to say is that when you get a redacted document, it's because that official decided they were going to redact it. So somebody in these cases, somebody from the Moscow Police Department said, well, I think we're going to redact this. It's not a legal doctrine that spells out specifically what that is. Does that make sense? It's an elective review of documents, and some slip through, like the photographs.
Well,
I've seen documents where something was
they're being sued right now over it, so it'll be interesting. Yeah. They're over redacting. In Idaho, you have to meet certain criterias. It has to be like personal information, obviously, identifying stuff like that. But this whole privacy over the public interest, like to weigh that, you should never be able to beat the whole extra privacy over the public. The public is enamored with this, and there's a ton of public interest. And for them to even say that they're redacting something because of privacy over the public, there's no public interest. There's hella public interest. They're basically they're being Moscow, and that's just what it is. So I get what you're saying though. Like, hey, it's like when I got the body worn cameras of the officers going over there for the noise complaints, nothing was redacted. Nobody's faces were blurred. There was nothing blurred like that. It was things were blurred.
We're saying the same things.
Writing something down.
We're saying the same thing. All I'm trying to say is they decided to redact these things. There's no rule that they had to redact this and that. I'm agreeing with you. That
so why do you think that they are?
Because that's what cops do. I mean, that's what cops do. It's not good or bad. It's just protocol. Like, look, you talk to a cop and you say, "Hey, what's that?" And he'll go, "That's a motor vehicle." And you say, "No, it's a car." Right? And they've got all this terminology. It's just the way it is. You watch TV, cop shows. There's their own language. It's a culture, and people do things in a culture, and it's just the way it works. Better or worse.
So let's circle back a little bit to Dylan. With if Bethany is the one that calls her first, how much does that change then the order of like Dylan saying that she's hearing Kaylee go upstairs with the dog, so there's someone here. That's not how this clearly all started. So my point is that in the book you talk about that there's basically two crime scenes within a crime, and then you have the common area. So you have the Xana and Ethan.
Third floor bedroom, second floor bedroom, and the common area.
And I'm 1,000% totally agree. That's exactly what the evidence shows. And then this common area is you got this diluted blood, with the exception of how is Ethan's blood transfer stain on top, and then there's undiluted Ethan's blood. And you make a good point to say it in the book that it's right where Dylan is the only person that went downstairs.
I did not say that in the book. I said it's at a place that would indicate somebody was going to the first floor. I didn't say it was. I did not mention Dylan in the same sentence. I did not.
No, you just said that Dylan, that's where Dylan traveled to.
Well, I said she was in a separate sentence. I said she was the only one that we know went downstairs. That's all I said. I did not.
But it was right after you made that comment, though, right?
Well, I was just talking about the blood stains around the room, and the only one that wasn't diluted was that one that was on the far edge of that flat top on the knee wall on the second floor by the beer pong table. But it was on the other side, going downstairs. And I said in the book,
like you'd have to
nobody went downstairs.
So this is
Dylan.
Exactly. Well, that we know of, right? Or this would tell us that hello, you don't want to be putting this on Dylan, right? So something else had to have happened here to transfer this blood.
All I was saying is there's questions that we should look at that are compelling. And if you can't answer those questions in a meaningful way, so the question is, how did that blood get there? Right?
Amen.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And they don't have an answer for it, right?
Never even addressed it.
Exactly. How is that possible?
You got me. Read the book and tell me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the book is saying that there is no answers.
The book says I don't have an answer.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, answer, but I don't have an answer. Yeah, I have an answer for it.
Okay. Sutton didn't have an answer. Turvey didn't have an answer. I don't have an answer. Ann Taylor didn't have an answer. Bill Thompson didn't address it. Let's go to Lana, because what's your answer?
My answer would be in the top floor, third bedroom floor, the feet of Kaylee and Maddie. In the Delphi case, it would appear that the killer, you know how if you were to, somebody goes to cut you, like here, stab you, your hand would be a natural reaction to go cover up your wound or whatever. Well, in the Delphi case, they washed the hands and made it was so pristine and redressed one of the girl. I mean, this had to take a lot of time. And they said that one man did this. His DNA is not there, but it got me thinking about the whole washing of the hands to take away this blood. And then it got me thinking when I read your book, this is how I got on thinking about this. When I read your book and we were talking about how stuff could be diluted and how it could be Maddie and Kaylee's blood that would be diluted down in the middle room because they were never down there. It got me thinking about a washcloth that if you were to, if somebody was to use a washcloth wet and maybe some, I don't know, whatever material or whatever substance you want to use, and you were to wipe, I don't know, someone's feet, hand, something. And when I thought about the book, is that if they didn't have any socks on, did they both have no socks on?
Kaylee kind of had one sock on and one off.
One sock, that's what I thought.
On part of her foot, not both socks on.
Mm-hmm. And then did Maddie have hers?
No.
So, or if it was just for the purpose, because there was no diluted blood though in the upstairs bedroom though, right?
Correct.
But there was what was the condition of the bottom of the feet in terms of like, I've only ever seen anything from the Sutton.
Based on the autopsy reports and the evidence, based on all the reports, the photos, everything that I've seen, there was no indication of blood underneath the comforter on the bodies below the upper body on one of the victims. There was no evidence that the killer or killers, there was no evidence that anything was done to the victims underneath the comforter. There's a lot of evidence that Kaylee was sitting up at one point, overwhelming evidence that she was sitting up at one point, but not that the comforter was ever taken off or that they were ever out of the bed. There's zero evidence. There's no blood whatsoever.
And you also mentioned how there was very limited, like this crime scene was hardly processed. Like
hardly processed?
Yeah. Like for example, okay, if I was to come to you and be like, hey, Chris, we have no mixture of any blood. So if the same killer used the same clothes and the same gloves and was upstairs, and then this whole, I was surprised by, Xana. And so I had to chase her. There was no Xana and the mixture of Kaylee or Maddie or Ethan.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great point. But I want to be very clear. The blood in the third floor was shed by Kaylee and by Maddie and no one else. We
Correct.
know that, right?
Yep. 100%.
The blood transferred out of the bedroom, down the hallway, left down the staircase and back down. Their blood was transferred to the walls as smudges, meaning somebody bounced up against the walls. Transfers. Well,
yeah.
Spatters transfer too, but smudges basically, right? Yeah, transfer. And then when you get down to the common areas, meaning the bottom of the stairs by Dylan's room, the kitchen on the left, up the step into the living room through the beer pong table, toward that knee wall, turn left to go down the bedroom. All of that area had blood transfer from Kaylee and Maddie. So the killers had to have taken the blood from the third floor and taken it downstairs. Okay. When they get down to Xana's room and to Ethan's room, there was no diluted blood there. And to the best of my knowledge, and everything that I've looked at, no one ever found Kaylee or Maddie's blood in that room. But
correct. There's not, and there's no mixture though.
There's no mixture. But I will say this, that there was so much blood that it is plausible that a laboratory would not have tested a sample that showed that confliction of combinations of blood because of the amount. Does that make sense?
Well, no, well, yes and no, because one thing that wouldn't make sense is if I'm working this case and you can't provide to me that anything in Maddie, because we're trying to figure out who's the target, who was killed first, where is this going?
Well, that's easy.
Well, the last people though, why wouldn't there be any? I would be saying we need to keep swabbing stuff until we can find Maddie and Kaylee's blood in this room for the mere fact of how did the person who'd be covered in blood not transfer any Maddie or Kaylee's blood in Xana or Ethan's room, which would lead one to believe that if you're using the same gloves and you have the same knife that they want to say that goes to this magical knife, there is no way in hell, okay, that you're going to be able to stab as many times upstairs both of those victims and come down with those same gloves on. And I don't care if you stop in the bathroom and you washed off this knife, your gloves are saturated right here. You're gonna be so bruised too here, but that's got to be in Xana in Ethan's room. And all I would say is, tell me how it wouldn't, and for me to move on from the fact to say that could these events either happen at the same time, right? Or did somebody, because the state's theory is it's just one person. That means the person upstairs, after they killed those two people, had to have completely changed. Put those clothes away, put on new gloves, a new knife.
Well, that's what Turvey says in the book. You know, in the book, he says that Sutton's report, a follow-up or rebuttal, said that he would have to be running around naked, right? And he found that perplexing.
That's what Sutton said.
Well, I mean, according to Dr. Turvey, in trading the reports back and forth,
Yeah.
but the naked thing came from exactly what you just said. Because when you ask that question, the only plausible answer is you take off all the clothing, you put them in a bag. Because remember, let's remember, there's no sign of anything outside that house anywhere. Not in the snow, not on the, there's no blood anywhere on the common areas of the second floor on the floor, except for that one thing that turned up under luminol, which appears to be a shoe print near Dylan's door. Otherwise, all of this occurred. There's blood everywhere in the third floor room, on the second floor room, on the floor of the second floor room, which is the last place the killer was, right? There's blood everywhere on the floor. And nothing, and I mean zero, made it from that room out into the hallway. So that goes back to Dr. Turvey talking about Sutton's report and saying the only plausible explanation is they took off their clothes and put it in the bag and were running around naked. That's where that came from.
Okay, so that's where I was saying. So it was never a defense's thought that, hey, the victims upstairs, their cell phones stopped moving and doing anything at 2:52, 2:53. Okay.
Yes, it was, but again, that's evidence of something, but that something is nothing. There are holes in this thing, and you point out many holes, right? I think you did a brilliant job. You continue to do a brilliant job at that, with the tracing the phones and the calculations, Dylan's watch, and all of these different things. I've seen no evidence that anybody else did that.
That's nuts.
I don't know. Maybe you're smarter than the average sparrow, and I don't know. But I'm telling you,
the reason, because you made some really good points in the book, and that's where I wanted to go with the whole Ethan's. So when do they have last proof of life for saying that who physically saw Ethan, and who's that person that's saying when they?
Nobody.
Because you have both of the roommates, right, saying that they never saw Ethan or
Correct.
Xana.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So what I was trying to always nail down is who's our proof of life on Ethan and Xana being alive up until when? Because there's supposedly a picture at 2 a.m. where some girl named Jacqueline, I guess, took either a picture with Xana or she's in the picture. And have you seen that? Xana's alive and well at 2?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if I think you've talked about it before, but Ethan texted her at it's in the book, but I think it's 2:11 or 2:18 or something. I saw a screenshot of his phone where he texted Xana at, I think it was 2:11, and said, "Where you at?" And they had an interchange. So that's the last time I know for sure that they were not together.
Okay. So because what I'm going at with this is that this when you're talking about staging something and you're talking about making it seem like something's not what it is, then you'd also have to consider that you could stage with cell phones, you could stage with fake calls, you could stage with, right?
Yeah, but here's the problem, and I don't know. I mean, I'm the first to admit that I'm a complete idiot when it comes to this stuff. I could find evidence if somebody points out what the evidence is, but I can say this right now, that the physical evidence of the crime scene is easy to read. The behavioral aspects of the crime scene are relatively easy to read. The technology around the cell phone communications at that time, in my opinion, is a huge part of this case that has not adequately been looked at. And you pointed out, I watched you, I still don't understand it, but you pointed out that there is a difference. And to be fair, I've looked at all the records. Like I've looked at all the stuff. I didn't know what I was looking at. And based on this, how much room I had in the book, I didn't go that way. However, what you've pointed out is there's a difference between a text message, a snap message, a TikTok message, a Facebook message, an email, and they used all of these different platforms, and they act differently in terms of signature when you delete them. Snapchat deletes automatically. What were they? Why were some on the phone? Why were some not on the phone? I think those things are critically important. I don't know that anybody's ever looked into it. Not to
Okay.
to the best of my knowledge, nobody has.
I don't think they have, and I think that would tell a lot. I think, yeah, this was it. When I said that Xana takes a picture with Jacqueline leaves the Sigma Chi, and Xana and Ethan stay. And this was at 2 a.m. that Bill Thompson. Did you ever see takes a picture with have you ever seen Jacqueline and this girl?
No. Have I seen that
Or, I'm
photograph?
sorry,
No.
Yeah. No, me neither. Now, at 2:01, Cooper Atkinson attempts to call Ethan 5 times on FaceTime at 2:01, and he doesn't answer. Okay. And I thought, okay, well, maybe they're having sex. I was like, well, they can't be, because unless he's having sex with somebody else, right? Because Xana's taking a picture with Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Unless they were in the same bedroom. Jacqueline's taking a picture with her, but she was saying that she was at the Sigma Chi house, But so Ethan doesn't answer that. Then the other thing I thought was interesting was that you laid out in this book was, the DoorDash was ordered by Xana's cell at 2:15, and by all accounts, there's that her ordering the food. She didn't order it at home, she didn't order it at home. So this is what would have to happen based on DoorDash app. Wherever you're located, it could potentially say, here, where do you want to be sending this to? Like, what address are you sending this to? Because it looks at where your location is. And then you would drop a pin, or you could put an address in and it asks you, okay, are you sure you want to send it here? Because you look kind of far away from your spot. And for, Xana being at the Sigma Chi house, that's not far away at all. So it would be, she might even get asked that question. And the girls all want food, though, at the house, right? So if Xana was going to order DoorDash, how we did it in college is, if I'm going to be making an order, everybody's going to get in on that order and then cut us off all a bunch of money. Like, here you go, here you go, here you go. Because you're not one of
She was not at the house at 2:15.
Okay, perfect. How do we? So then.
Well, when Ethan texts "where you at," she says something. I don't remember what she says, but it's not. She was not at the house.
Okay, well, that's not in the timeline here. The 2:18.
What is the 2:18? Refresh my memory.
Well, it just says there is no. I don't have Ethan texting Xana "where you at." I have that only happened.
Is that my book, or is that my book, or a different document?
I think this is from your book.
Oh, the timeline.
Yeah.
Oh, you're quoting the timeline from the book. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I quoted parts of that timeline because I thought they were important, but that thing was like 108 pages or 116 pages. It was a very broad timeline.
So was there more stuff that was here?
Not in that particular segment, no. I would not have eliminated something that was germane to that particular
Yeah, because I think it's definitely germane.
Everything that I've seen is nobody ever established when they got back together, where, and when they went back to the house. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's ever established that.
So
Dylan said she didn't know. Bethany said she didn't know. There's
how
nothing
about
at the
their
house.
phones? Like, I don't understand this. Like, his phone location, or Ethan's phone connected to the Vandal Air whatever Wi-Fi at a certain time. Okay, they had Wi-Fi at that house, so then that would mean that Ethan's phone, whenever he got back to that house, it would automatically trigger Wi-Fi. Nobody knows when Ethan's phone got on the Wi-Fi at the house.
Somebody does. I've never seen it. I've never seen it discussed. I've never seen it. No, I've never seen. Look, just because I've never seen it doesn't mean it's not there, right? But I can tell you this right now.
Oh, and
Bill
I don't think
Thompson
it's been
didn't know.
discussed.
Bill Thompson didn't know. If Bill Thompson doesn't talk about something and placing all this together, then that says all you want. I mean, it doesn't matter that I don't know. If he didn't know, that tells you everything,
Well, I want you to. So your opinion is that because he didn't put it on the timeline, you think that means he doesn't know, or he's not going to put something on the timeline?
No. I'm looking at a broad spectrum of documents that try to put together a timeline based on who knew what was, testimony, interviews at the sororities, interviews at the fraternities, interviews at bars, interviews of people, all of those things. Based on what I've read in researching this book, I've not been able to determine that anybody knew when Ethan and Xana returned to the house. We know she was there at 4 a.m. or shortly there before, and we know that they were not there.
How do you know that he was there? How do you know that he was there at 4 a.m.?
We don't know that Ethan was, but okay, we do know that because Molly McMichael delivered the DoorDash and took a photograph of it at 4 a.m., right? Somebody came down and took the food and took it to the kitchen because we got a photograph of the bag that says Xana with the food in it in the kitchen, right? We know that. So somebody picked up the food and I think some of it ended up in her bedroom because she had it in her hand when she was running away, I'm pretty sure. And so it's very likely she was there. And we know that
that shows that Xana was there at that time. Like
it shows that Xana was. It doesn't show Ethan was, but because Ethan, when he was murdered, let's just say, for example, and I don't want to speculate. I'm just showing you what the evidence shows. But if we speculate based on the prosecution report and what the defense was working with, and we go to the 1112 cam and we hear the audio signature of a loud bang and what people believe was Xana's voice and the dog barking. That was 4/17/32 or something like that, right? So we can use 4/17 as a placeholder for when the crimes occurred against Xana. And
hold on. That's what the prosecution is trying to say, but so they didn't take into account the fact that Bethany made a phone call to Dylan at 4:19 because it was Dylan's voice that she heard screaming because she walked in that room and saw whatever she saw. And then
okay, I've never heard that before. That's fascinating. Let's come back to that. All I'm saying is this, that when Xana went down and was murdered in her room, Ethan was naked in bed already and probably asleep. I mean, I shouldn't speculate that he was asleep, but he was in bed. He didn't get out of bed. Whatever happened, Ethan was in bed when Xana was killed in the room. And he was probably in there for some period of time before that because he'd already gotten undressed. Fair enough? So we know that Ethan and Xana were in that house 4 o'clock because of the DoorDash and 4:17, that time frame, we knew they were in the house. And we don't know when they were in the house when they got back. And that's the key because anybody that looks at this thing says, if the killer came into the house through the kitchen door, this is very important. If Brian Koberger came in through the kitchen door and went upstairs and killed Maddie and Kaylee in that bed, where was Xana? And why was it when they killed those two women and he came down to the bottom of the stairs, he encountered Xana? Where was Xana? The DoorDash bag is on the countertop in the kitchen, right? The killer comes into the kitchen through the sliding glass door, goes upstairs.
Contents in Xana's stomach.
I don't know. Somebody else asked me that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I've never seen a report and I've never seen a photograph. I don't know. But I do know that the food was out of the bag and that I think
does Xana go up a flight of stairs? Does Xana go up a flight of stairs between the time frame of like?
I have no clue. But I think this is very important, the plausibility of it. And I think people don't talk about this, but it's logic takes, I mean, you want to look at the evidence, behavioral and forensic, but the logic makes sense and timeline is critically important. If the DoorDash came at 4 a.m, and we know that's the case, unequivocally, we know that's the case, and we know what made it.
The DoorDash comes at 3:45. That's when the vehicle's coming.
Took a photograph of the food in front of the door at 4 a.m. Right? I think it was timestamped. So Molly McMichael was wandering around on a video camera. We're grasping at various other aspects of this thing,
and she's a known CI.
Okay, I'm not going to listen. Can I just make my point?
Yeah.
My point is that we know the DoorDash made it to the second floor kitchen sometime after 4 a.m. Fair enough? And if we believe, based on the prosecution report, if we believe that the killer came in and murdered Maddie and Kaylee on the third floor, encountered Xana, and based on the narrative that the screams in the door, whatever, was Xana being assaulted at 4:17, we could assume that it took several minutes to kill him on the third floor. My point is this. If the food arrives and the bag is on the kitchen counter sometime between 4:05, and the killer decided to come in through the kitchen, which was brightly lit, and came in through the sliding glass door and went up the stairs, where is Xana? If Xana's in the kitchen with the food, did she walk back out and go to the bathroom? They just happened to come in that gap of time, and you can see through the door. You can see whether or not she's in the kitchen. Goes upstairs, kills those two women, walks back down, and then somehow mysteriously Xana's at the bottom of the stairs. Explain that to me.
But Chris, this is so easy to tell because Xana had her phone with her. So we're on her phone.
It's easy for you to tell, Lana. It's easy for you to
I don't
tell.
understand why anybody wouldn't be looking at Xana's phone to see when it's. This is how John O'Keefe case.
Well, they
did.
They did to a certain extent. I mean, we know from police reports. And
when does that phone stop moving?
No, well, I don't know about movement, but we know when she was last on TikTok, right?
TikTok could just be running. That's so stupid. And I heard it was at 3:16.
I'm saying run this stuff out, Lana, because based on what I've seen, that was not part.
This is what I'm trying to get out is that there is no, like, there's no work product that you would have seen where somebody is sorting through these 4 victims and saying, here, this is their phone's movements.
No, there was the only movement I saw in any report, and again, let's be serious. There are reports I haven't seen, yes, but you said what's the release? Documents, supplemental reports 1 through 350 or something like that?
Oh, for the police, for Moscow Police Department, 312, 313.
A lot of the stuff, and I got to come back to the cast. I've got something else that people keep talking about, this gap in Brian Koberger's phone that I want to come back to. But what I'm saying is that to the best of my knowledge, based on the documents that I've seen, there has not been the analysis that you propose.
Yeah.
Did it happen? Maybe. If it did happen, why didn't nobody talk about it? The defense didn't know about it. Bill Thompson didn't mention it to the public. It was not in the change of plea hearing, recitation of evidence. Those would be important things to consider. I've not seen it.
It just seems like the defense accepted the timeline of when the crimes happen, that they were just accepting of this crime happening at that time.
I think everybody.
Or Ann Taylor was keeping this all under wraps because of if she's playing the long game, okay. And have you seen like the all the digital, like Josiah Roloff, Syray, any of those guys? Have you seen any of their guys' work, or are you not allowed to talk about that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that for a couple different reasons, but I want to say something important. Ann Taylor, for whatever this thing turned out to be, did the well, I don't want to evaluate her work. I mean, Ann Taylor is a career professional, obviously a very bright woman. She was a lawyer and whatever else, but I've not seen indications of things that would make sense after the fact, like the chain of custody that Dr. Turvey found later on. She went after the DNA on a knife sheath in a Frank's hearing, got turned down. She went after a great number of things in motions in limine, in various filings, in various hearings. She went after everything that that I could possibly think about. She got shut down at every turn. So this one particular thing,
she got shut down because of corruption.
Well, I'm not saying why. I'm saying I didn't see anything about this. But you're onto something. You're really truly onto something.
And I think that your book proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that this case was never investigated. There's no.
No.
It's just,
no. They investigated the shit out of this case.
Then you should know. Then you should know this. You should know when the phone stopped moving. You should know who's connected to the Wi-Fi. You should know what they're Googling. You should know. Not you. Let me back up.
Let me be specific.
The case file should be that obvious because that's just so fucking important. But guess what? It didn't happen in the Dr. Drake case, and I see why, because it does not support what they are peddling out here, and it's never supported it.
All right, let's stick with peddling for a second and be fair to me a little bit, right? What you can say whatever you want, and your viewers are going to say whatever else, and it's great. It's all fantastic. If I say something here, everybody that's listening right now is going to wrap it around their own theory, and they're going to make me out to be an idiot. They're going to make me whatever. So if you're going to do that, I want it to be based on specifics, okay? And my specifics are this, and I want to be very, very clear. I think the police did a comprehensive investigation, meaning the local, state, and federal investigators did a comprehensive investigation. Were there massive issues with what that investigated, how that information was treated? Yes. So I've got to use the right words. I think they did a comprehensive investigation, huge investigation, but you're pointing out many flaws in that investigation. Does that make sense? And a lot of that could be ascribed to the prosecution because the cops just do the investigation. They hand it over to the prosecutor's office, and then the prosecutors have to take that and make sausage. They've got to take it to trial. I'm just trying to be clear. Am I being clear?
That's your perspective. And all I'm saying is that they did not do a comprehensive thing because they stayed away from things that anything that's just 101 to build. If you're truly trying to get to a killer, there's just things that you would have to do, which you would start with the victims and to figure out when this whole thing happened, because the 911 call doesn't come in until noon. You know, this didn't happen at noon. So you have no idea what time this happened. And they were like, we're just going to go with what a girl is telling us who's drunk. And well,
Okay, well, I've got the answer. I do have the answer to that. And you know
Okay.
why I have the answer to that? Because Bill Thompson tells you they had DNA on the knife sheath. They said they had cell tower ping analysis that showed Koberger in the area. They said, and it had a white car. Bill Thompson said that's his entire case. That's it. That's the entire case. All this other stuff should be Ann Taylor's responsibility or somebody else's. So, Lana, I agree with you 100%. And I admire that. I truly admire the query that you put into this. But it was not. It was not a part of this case.
Well, it
and
doesn't.
that's why.
How about those three things mean absolutely nothing if the crime happened at 2:50?
Agreed. And you're onto something. But but that didn't.
So that's where it's just like, if this crime, it just happened in another case. This white truck is doing all this shit at this time. You guys, that white truck doesn't mean anything if the crime is at this time and that white truck's doing whatever and it's like an hour later. So for me in this case, when you point out in your book, and I think it was awesome, you guys have to see this, there is a white sedan that starts doing this, driving around and being on Ridge Road cameras at freaking before midnight. And then the other thing that you do that's really good with the book is, well, you're talking about how nothing is being connected. You can say all you want, but that car never gets connected to Brian Koberger. But how about why 2 days after the murders does a guy who's an MPD officer named Josh Tisdall, who was working, or Jacob rather, Tisdall, who was working with Nate Rosendahl, how come they're the ones that are working the undercover gig that night going into like the 12th and the 13th? And in a report, they write that they were making loops with their Fusion or what was it? Yeah, the Ford. They were making loops around the same type of loop that the white car was doing. We've gone through every single car that's come through there, and he said that he did this right before his minor in possession at 301. Why would a cop write up a report and lie about timestamps of when they cleared a call and are going to a different one? Why would they immediately know that somebody has to take responsibility of this car looping around, and it's really not them, or is it them, or is it another car that they have, because there's more than just two undercover officers that day? But we can place, there is no car that loops around right before you do the minor in possession. And Josh Tisdall is writing up reports like this. Has that anywhere in, does anybody talk about that?
If I read it, I don't remember it. It does not stand out to me at all. No.
And that the car that they were originally looking for, that's what the one of the makes is this car. And they were on also Indian Trails that night, along with Eric Gower.
Look, I've said from the start, and I say it throughout this book, I think the idea that we have somehow, Bill Thompson stood up and said, and I say this, the prologue of the book. I just take Bill Thompson's evidence recitation for the change of plea hearing in the prologue of the book, and I say, I quote him, this is what he said here and here. And he said, Brian Koberger in a white car. Nobody has ever, in any manner, shape, or form, placed Brian Koberger in a white car there. They've got a white car, they've got Brian Koberger, and the prosecution says he's in the car. There are no photographs showing him in the car. So therefore, what is the car? Who owns the car? What kind of car is it? Where did it go? So you bring up reasonable questions. But to the best of my knowledge, once they decided it was Brian Koberger in the car, it was over. That was it. Brian Koberger was in the car. That's the prosecution's statement.
But they don't get to Brian Koberger yet when all this is going on. Like, you make a great point in the book. You said we have Molly McMichael, and she's being interviewed, and she's like, I saw a sedan and there was a guy in there.
Right, with sandy red hair. And guess what else? The hair in the, I've just thought about it. This is the first time I've ever thought
Spiky
about
blonde, all that.
Yeah, I've never thought about this before. This is the first time it just dawned on me. Molly McMichael says the car, they changed it to an SUV. She said she saw the sedan, whatever. It all's great. It all makes perfect sense, except that he saw the guy's face and he had sandy blonde, reddish sandy blonde hair, right?
Spiky hair, yeah.
Spiky hair. Okay, was it spiky? Never mind. Okay. The hair found in Ethan's bed was analyzed by the FBI laboratory in his hand at autopsy, and it was found to be dark blonde, reddish, sandy reddish hair. But it was longer. It was 6 or 7 inches long, not spiky. So, anyways, forget that.
She's just given type this is understandable.
They immediately dismissed it.
But I like what you said in the book, though. How they dismissed it was, first of all, they weren't accurate because Molly's over here. She says that she saw a sedan, and then the cops are like, "No, she couldn't have saw a sedan, right?" And they say, "No, that we went and did our homework, and it was an SUV." Well, why couldn't Molly? They did this with nobody else. Nobody else. Like we went and looked into Dylan's crap that she wants to say, and we saw in the phone records that Dylan didn't call Bethany first. Bethany called Dylan, and so clearly Bethany's alerting Dylan to something. Okay, that's the type of stuff. Like, what I'm trying to say is that what the cops did is they already had a narrative, and they had it so early on that they knew what to stay away from. They knew what to get into. And when you're talking about stuff like that, they were controlling this from a very internal, strategic way to, you're not following up with, and you're not asking certain questions because you can't have that be said.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, what you say makes sense. I just don't have any evidence of it, but it makes sense.
So they never were talking about that? Like, you don't think they, like the defense was on that?
The only thing is the report. I mean, the report is very clear that she said she saw whatever, and the police said, well, that's not possible. She saw the SUV, whatever. The only reason it's not possible is because it didn't fit the description of Brian Koberger, right? That's why.
Correct. And it's actually, so do you understand though, then what they decide to do with this whole 424 car and this whole 429 SUV? We've gone over it like crazy people. And first of all, it couldn't have been the 424 car that Dylan ever saw unless you're going to put her in the bedroom already, which then she's just texting in the bedroom, which I still have on the ticket because somebody's using the same phone and making it seem like these are the texts. But because of that, nothing's overlapping. There's nobody calling each other like, hey, you call Kaylee and I'm going to call Maddie and we're on the phone at the same time. Those phones are not working like that. It literally could be one person could be using both of those phones because the evidence can support that. Not saying that happened, but you can't rule that out. But what was crazy is this 429 car. Now, in your book, you say, so you got to look at the Explorer logs.
Yes.
Okay. When's the last movement of the Explorer?
I don't know, but it didn't. To the best of my knowledge, it didn't move in that time period. But I'll check. But I don't know.
Because I'm wondering,
that was my first thought: is why didn't they check the logs in the white Elantra? And the answer is because it didn't have one at that time. It was an option, right? I think 3 of the cars, I think in the parking lot, had those modules that record all the phone calls and everything in the vehicles.
Yeah.
And they show movement, but nobody had those cars out that night. And there's a lot of information. Actually, there might be some really critical information in those logs, but I never checked. That's a great question, Lana. I never checked. To see what time the last movement was. Because
basically what you found, it matches perfectly. So at 424, the car that's leaving that SUV, well, do you know that they end up trying to say that it was a girl that left work to go check on her car?
Yeah, but it's not. It's a different vehicle.
Yeah, and that just totally didn't happen. So again, here it is. But they need somebody to be in this vehicle, and they're going to try to assign it to this girl to say she came home to check on her cats because she works the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, whatever. But guess what? That vehicle would have meant that it had to come there, relatively just before that. That vehicle was sitting there well by midnight. It's because it's there. You know what I'm trying to say? Like that couldn't have been the case, right? So regardless on who that is, the car that is the 424 car, you have that as being the 429 car.
No, well, I don't have it in front of me, but what I was trying to say is
that leaves and
there's
comes,
three cameras.
comes back.
Like I've talked to various people about this, and some people, like I was talking to the folks on Custody Queens about this issue, and I want to thank a lot of the really, really smart people there and other sites that are looking into this.
Yes, they're awesome.
I mean, really, really fantastic. And the same thing with Birdie and Devil's Advocate. There's so many people that really, really, truly care, and they're looking at the evidence, not just theories. They're trying to come up with things and do an analysis. But what I was trying to say is this. And this was a tiny, tiny part of the book. At the end of the book, I said there are some things that you, the reader, could look into that are not part of the case, but I just noticed that they were weird. Why don't you guys go look into this? Because by the end of the book, I say, look, we're all in this together now. You just read 430 pages. You see big holes. Let's get after this thing. This book is a starter package, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, I think it's great.
Well, it's a starter
love
package.
the book.
Well, it's a starter package, but let's do this together. We could fight. We could call each other names with theories in this community, or we could get together and say, you know what? Let's work together and figure out
let's
the answers
rule
to some
stuff
of these
out.
questions.
Yeah.
Let's if we're gonna come up with theories, let's make them based on fact. So it gets us to this SUV, and I'll just lay it out for people because it's probably nothing, but it could be something remarkable. So the white car leaves at 4:20, right? Help me with the time signatures. There are three cameras, 1112, Linda Lane, the parking lot, and then Linda Lane, the dumpster that looks down at Taylor Road. Fair enough? So at 4:24, I think it is. Yeah, 4:24, the video at Linda Lane shows a person walking to the back of a full-size boxy SUV. The tailgate comes up, the light comes on, they put something in the back, they close the tailgate, the driver's side, and they take off. You see it go past 1112 like 10 seconds, 15 seconds later. And the reason you know it's a specific vehicle is because it has a very loud exhaust. It's a large, boxy SUV that has a specific, like the Elantra looks like every other car. This car does not look like a Ford Explorer. It's boxy, it's very unusual. It goes by 1112 at about 4:25. It turns right, then it turns back and goes down Taylor Road. And we know that because you can see it on the dumpster video. It all makes sense, right? The odd thing about it is that it comes back about 3 minutes later or 2 minutes later. It goes down Taylor Road. What? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I don't think that it's the same vehicle.
Well, the time hacks match perfectly. You don't think it's what same vehicle? The vehicle
that comes back, you think is the same vehicle that
100%,
just left?
100% for three reasons.
Okay.
The vehicle that comes back 3 or 4 minutes later is on video at 1112, so it looks exactly the same. The sound signature is exactly the same because it's different than any other vehicle around there. And I say that because 2 separate witnesses said they heard it, and then they looked up and saw the vehicle. So it's documented by 2 witnesses. You can hear it on the camera, the sound signature, and it doesn't look like every other vehicle. It's a very unusual, the thing, whatever. It comes back up, and based on the sound signature, it parks at or in front of 1122 at 4:30, roughly 4:30. And then instead of going back to its original parking spot, which is only like 100 feet away, and then at 6:30, it returns to that parking spot. It's daylight, so you can see the vehicle, and a person gets out without a backpack and walks back down the hill toward the house. So my point was, there are things like this that people could go back to the videotape and run that out. And I have a printout of every vehicle owned or registered to a student at University of Idaho at that time. So somebody with a database mining technology could go through the database and say what cars were assigned to those apartments and who had this vehicle. You could find out very, very easily. But I was trying to say this is an example of what we, the readers of this book.
This is the most important part though, right here.
It could be, because how did that shit get out of the house? How did all that stuff get out, and when would it have gone, and why would this vehicle have gone and then come back and park there instead of its parking spot 100 feet away, and then an hour or 2 hours later get back in it and drive back to their parking spot? It's a big enough question to say, let's find out. That's the type of thing I was saying. We can do this.
So the car that comes back, just so you know, the car that comes back at 4:29,
yeah,
that's coming from North Blake. up by where the fraternities and sororities are.
Well, you see it on the dumpster video going
Yeah,
down
we see,
Taylor
we
Road.
see it all. I'm on the same page. I just personally believe that the vehicle that comes back at 429 does exactly what you say. It comes and it pulls right in to 1122 King Road. That's exactly, you can hear the door shut.
Yeah, you can hear
Okay.
the door shut. Yep.
Yep. And then so this is what's interesting. If you're truly a detective on this case and you're watching all of this, right? And this is why it was important to say this, the only vehicle that Dylan could be possibly talking about, she cannot be talking about the 424 car that left, because that puts
She
you
said
in
it was a
Bethany's
truck.
room. Yeah, that, or I'm just saying this, that means you're putting yourself in Bethany's room
Exactly.
when you're texting her.
Exactly right. Exactly
Okay.
right.
So
Yes.
then you have the 429, vehicle that she's like saying, I don't know what made me look out. I looked out and I saw, this black
Tail
truck.
lights, brake lights.
Yeah.
Brake lights. Look, I think that's an issue. People that read the book will take it and do it what they want with it. I believe that's something. I wrote that into the book because I think it's an example of what people can do now investigatively with your audience. The people that, I don't know, we've been doing this for a long time. I don't know if you have anybody watching this at all anymore, but if people are watching it,
There's almost 4,000 people watching.
there's no way. Right now?
Yeah.
You gotta be shitting me. Seriously?
Yeah.
4,000
I told you we were going to break the internet.
I can't believe this. I had no clue people were watching this right now.
Everybody's
I would say
loving
to
it.
the 4,000 people watching this, I would say, let's do this together.
Yes.
Why do we have to fight over silliness? Why don't we
Yes.
just say that all the things that we've thought to this point were based on rumor, speculation, and nonsense? Why don't we throw in together and start answering some of these questions? And look, if we do this, if we find these things out and you lead the way, Lana, or look, the great people that I've talked to before, like Birdie and Devil's Advocate and Custody Queens, all those people that I've met, and the ones that I haven't. I mean, so many really talented, really insightful, smart people out there. Why in the world do we have to argue about nonsense? Why don't we look and say, let's figure it out?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think that's the best message. The message here, guys, is that, listen, I've gone through this book. This book touches on 1/100th of the stuff. And there's so much there that you cannot read this book and say to yourself, oh my God, what an amazing case this was. And it's everything but that.
Look, if I believe in justice.
I don't know why Ann Taylor didn't ask Dr. Turvey, to come in way sooner. I'm kind of shocked. Because that crime scene speaks immediately. This was a cleanup job. This is why I don't understand how they really ever thought they would sell the fact that this all happened in just a couple minutes. It's impossible.
Look, I'll say I worked really hard on this from a basis of some experience, right? I worked really, really hard on this thing, and I tried not to get distracted with anything other than evidence. Because that's my background: FBI agent, evidence, whatever else. But also, I've worked as an investigator. I started out as a newspaper reporter. I've written for the New York Times and GQ magazine, a lot of different publications. And I did this on air as an on-air analyst at NBC. I got nominated for a Peabody Award for reporting from Guantanamo Bay. I've done a lot of the media side of this in addition to the law enforcement side. But it's the same thing. It's investigating. You find holes in something and you try to figure out how to, what fills them in. And what I'm saying is, if I've got one thing in this entire book that I would ask people to look at and read, and Lana, this book is full of, there's 100 things, many that we haven't even talked about, If there's one thing that stands out to me in all my experience, is why the common areas of the second floor look so dramatically different than the crime scene in the bedroom on the third floor and the crime scene in the bedroom on the second floor. You can't get from one to the other without going through those common areas. And there were bloodstains everywhere. It is such a compelling question. What happened in the common areas of the second floor? Why and how? And if there's nothing else that we talk about, I think we cannot overstate the importance of that question.
I agree. And I think the question then should really be raised here is it's so obvious that one then has to ask themselves, how can you look at the investigators, the prosecution, okay, that were seeking to get justice for these 4 victims, right? How could you look at them and say, like, everything that we're saying right here, they knew this. There is no way that they didn't know this.
Well, again, people can disagree, but I did this for a living a long way. I'm not telling you what's right and wrong. I'm telling you the way it is. I'm not saying I know why they do these things.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
saying
no
this
blood
is
on the ground.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'll go back to it before where I got in trouble. Somebody calls up and says, you can't say they did a great investigation. I didn't say that. I said they did a comprehensive investigation. This file is huge. This file is huge, and it's all kinds of different agencies. It was massive, the investigation. What they did with it is a different story, and it's not all the police. The police hand the information to the prosecutor takes it to grand jury to arrest a trial, and that's what we saw. So wherever you affix blame, if there is any blame, and I'm not saying there is, if there is any blame, it's not solely that they did a bad job, it's that what happened along the way. Is that clear, or is it?
Well, I don't understand. I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm asking,
Yes.
why aren't they asking themselves the questions? Because that's their job.
I'll tell you, the answer is because Brian Koberger.
No, this was way before that. This was no. I'm saying he didn't have his name. I'm talking about November 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I am talking about the stuff that you would do in the beginning. I don't even care once you get Brian Koberger's name to arrest him. Okay, there are so many questions that in order to prosecute him and succeed, you weren't going to succeed if you went to court. I'm sorry, but that's why it was trial by media ambush and Bill Thompson standing out there to spread this fucking PCA far and wide. Spread it far and wide. They were saying that he was stalking them, and then he has to retreat all that stuff back. Nobody was stalking anybody. Nobody's stalking anybody. Why? Because now you're about to get your ass sued, WSU, because you guys didn't do what the fuck you're all supposed to do. This is 2 universities covering their own asses, but they're doing it with the police department because the police and the universities, they're the daddies and the mommies. And
I got to weigh in on that and say one thing. You know what I know about Bill Thompson and WSU and Idaho State? You know what I know about all these things? Zero. I've never met the man. He had a great career. I don't know anything about him. So I have no dog in your fight because I looked at none of that because it wasn't evidence-based. So I can't comment. I don't know anything about it.
Well, no, the evidence-based stuff is that you should not have all these questions here. And these are things that needed to be answered in the beginning.
Yeah,
by the investigators to figure out who did this. You cannot get past it by saying, okay, we're gathering all these victims' phones. They didn't even get into Kaylee's phone. We don't even know when Kaylee's phone last moved.
Never.
They didn't even get.
They could have
called up the Secret Service and have worked with the Secret Service to do all that stuff. And then you have the other 3. Okay, wait, we don't need to ask Dylan or Bethany, who's telling we didn't see them when they got home. We have their phones to see when they connected to the router and the Wi-Fi. We're not going to use that. We're not going to use their phones to see when they're last moving. We're not going to, to see when Ethan's on his phone looking at something, doing an actual command on his phone versus all I see here is Ethan getting stuff sent to him. But I don't see Ethan replying.
Well, okay, let's go back. Let's go back to where we started. And we talked about the interview with Blaker and Detective Gooch, right? And we had 2 different perspectives on it. I'm not entirely sure, even now thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure that he did know those photographs are on her phone. I don't think it was playing dumb. I think there was miscommunication in so many elements. If you listen to some of the interviews and you listen to some of the things that are going on, it seems to me that people just didn't know. One hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. I'm not entirely. You make a good point,
Chris. You're not going to go interview somebody and not look at the material so that you know what the hell you're talking about and what you should be asking about.
I don't know, Lana. Some of those interviews I've listened to, and I'm thinking to myself, what world did this person come from to ask these questions or not ask these questions?
There's no follow-ups. You say it in the book. You're like,
the second interview with Dylan is so bad.
It's bad.
Comical. Have you heard it? It's comical. It sounds like he's flirting with her. It sounds like, when I was in college, he's making up all these goofy sighs and weird laughs and stuff. Nobody even asked a question until like an hour and 40 minutes in. I wrote that in the book. Nobody even asked a question, and it's a detective from another state, right? So you bring up a great point. It could be a good cop, bad cop, or whatever angle. But based on what I've seen,
You're giving them a lot of grace, and I appreciate that. I would not expect anything less.
No, I'm not giving them grace. I'm saying it's not good that you do an investigate or an interview with two detectives and one doesn't know what's going on. That's not grace.
Well, especially when Gooch knows it, and why was Gooch brought in? You know what I mean? Like she's smart. And she's over here just like, so wait, you're not scared, but you're writing. That's what I'm saying. Like, why aren't you saying, but you're writing in a text message how scared you are?
Well, that changed every 10 seconds. That's a whole other issue that I'm not going to get into, but I do in the book a little bit. But yeah, I'll tell you right now, and I've said a couple other places, I think it was about 25 pages of this book were cut out where I talk about some very, very obvious topics, like other people involved and other really brand names. And I thought I had some really compelling information.
You do.
But libel lawyers thought that my compelling information was a little too compelling. So there's so much more to discuss on this thing.
Can you say what was in the 25 pages?
No? Well, it was about everything that we know about other people involved in this case. I mean, basically, who was looked at as a person of interest, who was officially called a suspect in police reports, and who were the people that were looked at. And there were so many. Oh my God, Lana, there were so many people and so many names that you don't. Well, maybe you do. That people don't know.
I do.
But you've got the regular. You've got all the other names too, and people have no idea what this thing looked like before Brian Koberger was the guy. I mean, it was wild. But anyways, it was all cut out, and I understand why.
So, a couple more things here with that. The Jack Showalter, the hoodie guy stuff. Did you ever see a slip that said that he was asking for someone to go check his water from a maintenance department so they could, in like a maintenance department man, say that oh God, I saw blood, in which they use then to be able to make probable cause to get into his apartment?
No comment.
Thank you.
No, I'm not saying I did or I didn't. I'm saying 25
I like
pages.
That answer.
There's stuff I can't talk about for what I think are probably obvious reasons. I'm not going to say X, Y, and Z. We know one thing. We know one thing unequivocally. Brian Koberger was identified as the suspect, and he pled guilty. And everything else is a whole different. That's up to people watching now, I guess. I'm no dog in that fight. I did, but that dog.
I did with the book, right? You're like,
well, it's not in the book anymore.
Well. You're saying your dog in the fight was, hey, I felt compelled to write this because there's people on both sides of this case that are like, this is unbelievable, and what everybody thinks this is not.
If I had to judge it, if I had to summarize this book, you just did. People on both sides have opinions and theories, and we've been talking about them for 3.5 years. And the human nature is, I'm not, but people are invested in their theories. They've been talking about it in public forever. And all of a sudden this thing comes out and they go, oh, what do we do now? And I would just say, consider looking at it. And once you have some information that is based on actual documents, I'm not going to say facts, I'm going to say documents.
Yeah.
Then look at it. And that's what you've done, Lana. You've looked at this thing and I think you called it a workbook. And which for me that's as great a compliment as I could get. If you see something that you could take moving forward and put that noggin of yours on it, then I would say yay.
Thank you, Chris. That's very humbling to hear. So thank you very much.
Sincerely.
So Dylan's, that stool that was kind of like out of place, and was there any talks about if there were like, multiple people, that somebody was like sitting on that stool, like as a lookout? Did they ever think about?
I can't say this. I didn't talk about it in the book, but I've looked at it over and over again. I think that stool was moved by police. I don't think. I've got photographs that show it in different places, and because of the sequence that photographs.
Oh, that definitely wasn't moved. The one that was right by. Like
when you walk into the kitchen by the.
It's right there.
Yeah. And why do you think that's a problem? I'm not sure.
Oh
why.
no, I was just saying like in the body worn camera that stool is like right there. Okay. So I
Yeah.
didn't know if maybe like a couple of things come to mind. If you're putting like a speaker, like a little speaker there.
There was
so you
a
can hear
speaker on
music.
it.
Well, it was on the other one though. But I'm saying
Yeah,
the
it
one
was on
that
the
was-
other. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was on a stool. Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting because again, that's just something that would have been, the killer coming around and something that they could have walked into because it's kind of like right there, like same thing kind of with like the beer pong table.
Well, look, I mean, there's so many other things. If we're going to get there, I mean, we've been on this thing forever, but here's the big thing. If Dylan says she saw this guy standing outside her door at whatever after all these crimes, and he's carrying this thing in his hands, he's got this vacuum, whatever, we have to assume that maybe that was the thing that he used for blunt force trauma on Kayla in the third floor, gets to the bottom of the stairs, and then he encounters Xana. Where does that thing go while he's attacking Xana? He puts it down on the floor, chases her down, kills her and Ethan, comes back, picks it up, and suddenly Dylan opens the door and sees it. That's a problem. The door, was the front door open in the morning as the guy walking his dog was it Newworth or whatever his name was?
Justin, yeah.
Was the front door open as witnesses said? If so, who closed it? Number one. Two, if another thing, this is silly, but this is the type of stuff we have to look at. If the sliding glass door was open from 4:00 in the morning until noon, 8 hours, and it's 28 degrees outside and the thermostat is right there on the wall, that house is going to be 110 degrees on the third floor because it's going to be pumping heat the whole time. There are many, 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 many things that we, the people watching now, hopefully the people that read this book and look at this book, we're not chasing theories. We're answering questions.
Yes.
And then once you answer those questions, you can look in honest and meaningful ways at finding truth. And that is, if anything comes out of this, that would make me feel like it was a year that I not wasted.
Well, you definitely didn't waste a year. I'm going to wrap this up because I do want to have you back. But the Alexa, Bethany said that Dylan had one. None was booked into evidence. None was ever asked upon by any investigator to say, hey, where's this Alexa? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wrote about that because I mean, there's no indication that it would have recorded what happened in that house, except that it could have, right? I mean, you say a certain word and it triggers it in a certain way. It could have recorded the whole thing, right? So somebody pointed out one time and they were saying, well, it's not the device, it's the data, right? But if police didn't know about the data, they wouldn't have known to search about it. Things like that stand out. And you say it's in the report, why was it not followed up? And it's just another example. But is it compelling? I think it's compelling.
Yeah, but it's compelling also because there wasn't one located.
Right.
Even if you don't ask her, where was it?
Right. It's not in the photographs and it was not taken as evidence. So
right. Now
then there's the bracelet found on the spare bedroom. I know you got to go. I mean, we've been at this forever, but the
I
spare
can talk
bedroom,
forever about
like
this.
I said, we've hit like a small part of a 430.
That's what I'm saying. Like we've only, and I felt like if I rushed too much through it, and I want to just have you back for a part 2.
I recommend you I'm thrilled to come back and talk to you, Lynn, anytime. But I think if you can get Dr. Turvey to come on and talk he's a brilliant man. What's that?
I said, just put in a good word and we'll make it pop.
I think he would. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy, and he is wildly experienced. He's worked more than 3,000 violent crimes. He's testified in something like 78 homicide trials. 78 trials means a huge amount of cases. And he's written 20 or 22 books on all of these things that we're talking about. He is a remarkable guy and wildly experienced. But I'll tell you one thing right now, and he'd laugh if he was sitting here, if he hears me saying this. He is a lot to talk to. I mean, he does not mince words. He believes in the truth, and he'll tell you what it is. So
that's awesome.
He'd make a fabulous guest.
That's awesome. And Chris, I want to say, thank you for, like you said, to write this book. There's no doubt that you were going to face criticism from anyone and everyone. And it's like, why? Dateline, nobody was criticizing Dateline except for the defense. Everybody was perfectly fine with Dateline having these huge leaks and putting out all this crap before a trial. Why people would be giving this man shit after when a trial doesn't even happen. Brian Kober has pleaded, away. For me, it's about our rights, number one, across the board. And they just seem like they were absolutely trounced on in this case. And this is, in my opinion, this is not how the criminal justice system in America is supposed to work. You don't go after death penalties to make people take pleas. You don't strap defense attorneys so they can't defend their clients. And you don't have judges that are making arguments for the government when they can't make an argument, so that you could swing it and flip it and have an order. And now you just played prosecutor. The things that I saw in this case were absolutely mind blowing. And once we got the crime scene photos, the ones that we even got that were redacted, it's just like, how the hell can nobody say, oh my God, this did not happen in a matter of minutes, not even a matter of 20 minutes. Like, this is nuts. And for you to peddle that, meaning not you, the government, the state, is flat out fucking gross. Sorry. That's just how I feel. And you have to answer to that, because you can't pass any of the questions, the tough questions. I just think that everybody on cross-examination in this case, if they did their homework and prep for each one of these witnesses, would have absolutely got destroyed if you knew the documents.
I don't think during our conversation or any conversation I've had with anybody, and certainly not in the book, I don't take a side. I don't speculate. I don't offer theories. I present the evidence as clearly as I can with the constraints of a 430-page book, and it generates conversation. And two things happen. One, we live in a world, you live in a world, I don't really live in this online world except talking to you guys. We live in a world where hate is the easiest thing. All you got to do in order to get recognized is say something mean. Like this whole thing, I saw this thing, I think you told me about it, that somebody said that I was trying to sell pictures of this to the media.
If you were.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, where does something like that come from? Are they really so sideways that they would come up with something like that? And if that was the case, where are they? Or why would these things come out of nowhere because they're easy, they're hateful, and they get clicks, or because it makes them the center of attention. So if you want to talk about something and disagree with me, right on. I mean, absolutely, that's the whole point. But the stuff that comes out of some of these discussions is so hateful and mindless and ridiculous that I think eventually they'll get swallowed up. This is going to go through this tumult right now as chaos. But I think as we move past it, I think it'll settle into rational minds. I hope, I don't know, I hope it settles into rational minds and people look at this and say, let's take a look at true crime issues in a meaningful, evidence-based way, and let's find a new way to look at these things. It's not sensationalized. It's not wildly conspiratorial. And let's do this together where we can look in a meaningful way at the facts of the case and find a way to find truth. That's my hope. It might be the most ridiculous hope of all time, but
No.
these people that spew this stuff, I think eventually they're going to get swallowed up with people like you and all the others that are really meaningfully trying to find truth. But anyways, who knows what people are going to do? Hate is easy. I couldn't care less. Could not care.
I'm so glad that you spoke on that too. I said I don't think so. I think that would be absolutely the wildest shit ever. I don't think it needs to be done. But yeah, it's you said it great. You said it great. Where it's just like, hey guys, these are actually the facts that we're going to come out. Here's the documents. Or that this is what Idaho should be putting out. This is what Hitler should be. He says he's going to put out. He's going to put all the documents out. Well, when you actually get the documents, and we're not talking about gross crimes, we're talking about the actual case that the prosecution was going to present in that courtroom. And
did Judge Hitler say that? Did he say at some point he was going to put them all out? I didn't see that.
Yeah, like he's been going through stuff and everything's being unsealed, but he is releasing one document per. It was supposed to be like, here, like, why are you just putting it up and everybody gets to click on it? Like and you download the material. But he said that all the different filings, and they were putting all the exhibits in on the record. And
well,
so
you know,
like
another thing, you bring up a good point. I know, and I think you and I have talked about this, but this is just the first of these. People say, why'd you do this and all, whatever. There's no reason to go into that. But it's the first. There are many other examinations. People are lined up to write books on this thing. They're coming out. I know they are.
They are.
And documentaries. So this is the first, but there's a big line of them coming out. I promise you that.
Yep, there are. I concur. I know that they are. And I said that May and June and July for this case, people are going to be knocked out of their seats. And that's all I was saying. And here they come.
Yeah, I only ask one thing and leave, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Lana.
so much
Sincerely,
for coming. Thank you
And
for being up here for 3 hours with me.
Yeah.
Doesn't
No,
fly
I was just gonna
by.
say, we got to get out of here, but I also want to thank people that I've met through this that really pay attention. The people that I've met before. I know there's some really remarkable people out that really give a damn about truth and justice, and I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to the members of your community, the true crime community, that are working in an honest way at finding something. I think it gives me great hope.
Mm-hmm. And when you decided that you were going to do this, did you kind of have a time to, like, how long did you think it would take to write a book? I've never wrote a book. I said that I've always wanted to.
Well, I mean, this is my 6th book, and I've got another one coming out in October. So 7. These are books with major publishers. This was HarperCollins. The last one, I had a book come out in August with Random House. And they're all different. What I was trying to say is they're all different. This one took about 10 months. I worked for about 10, but that was 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
I was going to say, what do you think? Yeah. Like
when I finished
7 days.
When I finished this thing, it was 14, 16-hour days. I mean, it was a lot of work, a tremendous amount of work.
Do you feel like when you were researching it, it was like you couldn't stop till you found, like, if you were reading something that you had to go look somewhere else because you were like, wait, how does this happen? You know, like,
yeah.
You can't, like, you know, you're trying to. That's how I see myself. It's like I have to find a certain stopping point.
Well, yeah, I just ask you and your viewers. I mean, these are all, if you're watching this thing, and if there's anybody left and you're watching this thing right now, you are curious minds. You're smart. You're a seething curiosity. Now imagine an 18-wheeler pulls up on your lawn and dumps an 18-wheeler full of documents on your lawn, and the wind's blowing and it's raining and you're running around going, what is this? What is this? I mean, it was heavy. It was so much. But I want to thank other people. I wouldn't have done this or know anything about it if people didn't believe enough in justice and truth to expose me to this in the beginning. This didn't start with me. This started with people who wanted me to somehow translate it to a broader audience. That's how it started.
Well, whoever did it, thank you, because it needed it. It needed it, and it's I know that I have a little kid, and there's no way in hell that if more people are involved in this, that they need to be any fucking where walking free, because this is, and how you could get somebody to, why you wouldn't want to ask a bunch of questions, especially the FBI, like this is what they work with, and figure out, like, how did this man do this? If it is Brian Culver, why don't you ask yourself how this truly happened then? Learn something so that maybe we can prevent it from happening, you know, but it just doesn't seem like people want to know that.
I think there's a lot of good people that it just went sideways. A lot of good people doing the best they could. It didn't work out. In my opinion, I won't even say anything. I'll say a lot of people did the best they could. You read the book and tell me if it went the way you think it should have. I suspect I know your answer.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Truth and Transparency. Appreciate you guys. Chris, hopefully you don't think that I was going crazy. I love it. Okay.
Lana, you're
like, I'm just going to be me all the time.
Yeah, and, but you all the time is perfect.
Yeah. I just think that it's
seriously,
the best way to be.
You can do this in any venue. You're smart. You're curious. Don't give a shit about nonsense. Yeah. And I admire that. I truly, I'm saying that between you and me, I admire it. I respect it and admire it.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you to all the viewers. Go out. I'm telling you, you need to get this book.
Oh shit, was that live? Oh, I
It's
didn't know
live.
I didn't know people listen to that. I'm sorry.
People
Just
that
us right
want,
here.
and you
See you on the
want
next
them.
one.
Yeah.
We'll be back.
7, 8 families
You're
are
great,
being affected
Chris.
by this. And